Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hello.
Good evening, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Madera City Council. It is 6 p.m. on Wednesday, September the 1st, 2001. This meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order, which suspends certain requirements of the Ralph M. Brown Act. The City Council meeting will be live streamed on the city's website at www.madera.gov/live. Members of the public may participate in the meeting remotely through an electronic meeting via phone by dialing 559, 556-900-833. We're looking at that my screen is messing up for some reason. Enter ID 894-6241-6013, hashtag followed by *9 on your phone to speak. Comments will also be accepted via email at citycouncilpublicmeeting@madera.gov or by regular mail at 205 West 4th Street, Madera, California, 93637. I now call this meeting to order. Alicia, would you call the roll?
Mayor Garcia.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Villegas.
I'm here.
Councilmember Gallegos.
Here.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Montes.
Here.
And Councilmember Evans.
Here.
Thank you. And would you all please rise for the invocation led tonight by Pastor Roger Leach, Valley West Christian Center, and the rest of the prayer group.
Thank you so very much. Let's just entertain the very presence of God as we pray over our city. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this opportunity to bless our city council, our city, Lord, the staff that have gathered together and those that are working hard to keep Madera safe. We pray your continual blessing over our community. We pray safety and health. We pray strength over it. Lord, we pray financial blessings and provision. Lord, we pray for even the areas that are outside of California that are being devastated by fires. We just pray that right now that those fires will subside and start to be literally controlled and start to just go away. Lord, we thank you that we have been blessed by having such a beautiful community, a beautiful group of people. We ask that you continue to provide that protection and blessing over us. And we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you all.
Thank you very much.
Blessings.
Would you all please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance led by HR Director Wendy Silk.
Yeah.
Please pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless you all. We'll see you. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. We know you had to leave, so it's okay.
Okay.
Get my technical difficulties out of the way today. A little bit of everything today. Thank you very much for that. And now we will move on to the approval of the agenda. I will ask my colleagues if they have any changes or additions to the agenda. Seeing none, I will now ask for a motion from my colleagues.
I offer the motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Is that you, Mr. Montes?
Yep.
Motion to approve the agenda by Councilwoman Evans, seconded by Mr. Montes, Councilmember Montes. Alicia, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Gallegos.
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Yes.
Councilmember Montes.
Yes.
Councilmember Evans.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Villegas.
Yes.
And Mayor Garcia.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously with 6 yes votes and 0 no votes.
Thank you very much. We will now open public comment. The first 15 minutes of the meeting are reserved for members of the public to address the council on items which are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speakers shall be limited to 3 minutes. Speakers will be asked but are not required to identify themselves and state the subject of their comments. If the subject is an item on the agenda, the mayor has the option of asking the speaker to hold a comment until that item is called. Comments on items listed as a public hearing on the agenda should be held until the hearing is open. The council is prohibited by law from taking any action on matters discussed that are not on the agenda, and no adverse conclusions should be drawn by the council if the council does not respond to public comments at this time. Alicia, do we have anybody wanting to make public comments?
Mayor, I do have written public comment, but I'll hold off on those until we get to those items under section D.
Okay.
And we do have 2 attendees, but their hands are not raised, so they may be for later on in our meeting. So no public comment at this time here.
Thank you very much. We do not have any written communications. We do have a presentation by our Department of Public Health update on COVID-19 report by the Public Health Department. Welcome, Sarah. Good to see you.
Hello, good to see you. I wonder with Delta and what's happening, if this might be more regular as it was before. I was kind of hoping it might be something less regular, but we are looking at a significant surge, and we are particularly concerned about what's going on with our hospitals. We do have at this point total cases at 18,670 and the number of deceased at 250. Our case rate is high, but hopefully starting to level off. We are seeing trends that were similar in our last surge, where with high volume of testing, there are some data inconsistencies. And so it's important to look at like the rate across the week as opposed to individual cases reported on any particular day, because we are seeing that it bounce around daily, and looking at averages are important. So we might be looking at a plateau. We might be looking at something where it's just a slope that's still going up, but at a slower rate. But we are still very concerned about our hospital capacity. And in particular, because hospitals don't look the same as they did in the last surge with regards to staffing. There has been a lower number of nurses available, just because nurses are fatigued and many are opting to kind of step out of the profession. So there's been an exodus of nursing from the profession. Traveling nurses are now outrageously expensive, and oftentimes will come, serve for a couple days, and then demobilize to another location. So it's very highly competitive to hold on to nursing staff, and that has made things really, really dicey for local hospitals in the Valley in particular, as sometimes deploying to the Valley is not as attractive to other areas. And our hospitals in the Valley are also struggling to be able to pay those high cost of nurses. So we are, there's a meeting first thing in the morning to really address the situation in the hospitals in the Central Valley area. First thing tomorrow, but we're in constant communication with them. But this call is with the state across the entire Central Valley. Turning to vaccinations, our percent of Madera County residents that have received at least one dose is at 55.4, fully vaccinated at 46.4. Those numbers have been going up, but very slowly. And we are continuing to really promote heavily vaccination and try and make it available. We did vaccination clinics for back to school, and our student population, as well as their families, are receiving vaccinations, but again, at a much slower pace than what we'd like to see. We do have mass vaccinations clinics most days of the week, usually in afternoon and evening in order to make it available, and on weekends. We also are offering vaccinations at our Madera District Fair. That's September 9th through the 12th. The fair is going to look different this year, and we've been working very closely with them. They've made a lot of interesting decisions to try and keep distancing possible. So the like the concerts, for instance, were deliberately chosen to not draw huge crowds, but instead be something that people might be stepping into, interested, enjoying, and then stepping out of. We're also working with them to do lots and lots of signage to let people know that we're monitoring what's going on in the fair. And if it's really reaching levels that are not safe, given how contagious Delta is, people not distancing, not choosing to wear masks, then we are going to be keeping tabs on that with leadership of the fair to be responsive to the protection and health of the community. But vaccination clinics, of course, encourage people to access that by either calling 311 or visiting My Turn. There were some questions I know that came about boosters. This is what we know. Boosters are currently available for those who are immune compromised, and people are encouraged to reach out directly to their primary care provider or the provider who treats them for their special condition that qualifies them as immune compromised. People can register for that third shot if they're immune compromised on My Turn. But the announcement from the White House with regards to boosters available September 20th for individuals who are 8 months after their second shot of mRNA vaccine. So there's several things in that statement. First of all, it's boosters for people who have gotten an mRNA vaccine. They're not addressing Johnson & Johnson. They were silent on that. They're saying it has to be 8 months after the second shot. So those would be individuals who are vaccinated early. That includes immune compromised, but also might include those who are more vulnerable due to age. Those were the people who were first through the line at the beginning of all of this. It was given with a caveat that it needed to be vetted by FDA and it also needed to be vetted by CDC. These agencies have not weighed in officially on that announcement. And so we are still awaiting to see what's going to happen with that. We are looking at our capacity for increased vaccination demand and are ready to be able to do that if that does kind of get approved, so to speak, by those agencies and then also by the state CDPH. In terms of testing, we've seen lots more testing in recent times. Our state testing site through Optum is still available at the fairgrounds. Even though the vaccination is not at the fairgrounds anymore, vaccination is mostly through our office and mobile sites, but the testing at the fairgrounds is still operational. At the same time, because of the fair, for a 2-week period of time from the 1st through the 13th, it's located at Pan Am. And we were really grateful to Arnaldo and city staff and helping us sort that out really quickly. And so the testing is Monday through Wednesday, Friday and Saturday, 7 to 7, basically every day except Thursday and Saturday and Sundays. And the way that people register for that test is the same as it's always been. We are seeing a lot of increased testing, both because of what's going on with Delta, but also because school is back in session. And so we've been working really, really closely with Madera Unified School District, of course, in the city of Madera, to be able to keep kids in school. Because the rule is for modified quarantine that's just available for K-12 schools, if the person who has COVID and the person who's exposed to COVID are both wearing mask on mask, then the person who's exposed, as long as they test twice during the quarantine period, they can still attend school. They're not supposed to leave their house for other reasons. They're not supposed to go to social activities. They're not supposed to be in sports, but they can be in the classroom. But testing that many kids all the time, every time there's a case, is quite a big lift, especially like dealing with seating charts and how many kids were exposed and trying to keep the number of tests low. So we're working lockstep with the school district and providing a lot of that testing support. We want to keep our kids in school as much as possible, working really, really hard to make that possible. Staffing becomes a real challenge because if you just have a few teachers that test positive, then who's left to be able to teach? And so really significant challenges, and we're working really hard. And Todd and his team are just great to work with. The promotions that we have to promote vaccination, refer a friend, which has been around for a little bit, is still gaining speed. Basically what that is that people can go onto our website. If they get a code and they give that code to somebody who's not vaccinated, the person goes to get their vaccine, gives the code. The person who referred them and the person who gets vaccinated both get $25. The idea is that we're wanting to encourage people who are vaccinated to tell their friends and family, because what we learned from data is that individuals who have not yet vaccinated often are waiting to kind of see what happens with people they know. So we want to foster that conversation. And lastly, we have a program that's rolling out across the county, but we worked with Debbie Bray, Chamber of Commerce, as well as other chambers. They helped us identify businesses to participate in what's called vaccine deals. So there are rubber bracelets that say things like, I'm vaccinated, you're welcome. And if you've gotten vaccinated, I encourage you to get your bracelet. You can contact the health department to do that. And we're reaching out to big employers to get those distributed out to their employees. They can wear their rubber bracelet, go to one of the businesses that's on our website. It's at maderacounty.com/vaccine deals, and they can get discounts on all kinds of different things. So we're wanting to drive business to our local businesses, as well as encourage people to be vaccinated.
All right. And on that note, let me see if I can get this right.
Great. Glad to see it.
I'm sporting my bracelet. Happy to join and promote. And also the partnership between the City of Madera and Arnoldo, our city manager, to make that happen, to give you space at Pan Am Park. It's not the first time that the city has done that. And I applaud the partnership and Mr. Rodriguez's proactiveness in getting that done. So yeah, absolutely.
We've partnered on lots of things, and I can't remember them all.
Yep. We're gonna open it to any public comment out there. Alicia, do we have any public comment? Any members of the public that want to speak?
Not at this time, Mayor. Oh, looks like you have a council member.
Yes, I was gonna go to that.
No public comment, Mayor.
Excuse me?
No public comment at this time.
Correct. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Garcia. Sarah, thank you again for your presentation. So is there anything that we should be cautious about with the Delta variant? And I ask only because it seems like, variants are popping up so fast. Now there's a possible Lambda variant, and I don't know if you can touch on that and how that's different from the original COVID-19 or the original Alpha. If you can touch on that and how what kind of impacts Madera County can see with that other variant arising.
So I'm not as familiar with Lambda. I haven't come up to speed with that yet, but I can tell you that the difference with Delta is that it's a lot more transmissible. So the time that it takes for someone to catch it is much shorter. Where it used to be 15 minutes, it might be as little as a minute or less than a minute if you are in close contact with an individual who has Delta and they're not wearing a mask in particular. But obviously everyone wearing masks makes that better. And more importantly, people who are vaccinated, even if you do get Delta, it looks like the experience of Delta is still similar in terms of the types of symptoms. So if you were to catch Alpha and you're vaccinated, you're probably going to have mild symptoms. If you catch Delta and you're vaccinated, probably mild symptoms. Very few people end up in the hospital if they're vaccinated, regardless of which type, which strain at this point. But individuals who are unvaccinated, of course, they get Delta, again, same risk with regards to severity of the illness that happens. Their pre-existing conditions, but there's also that segment of the population that even if they're healthy for some reason, and we haven't figured out the reason why, some people end up in the hospital anyway. So the most important thing to do is to encourage people to get vaccinated. And also with Delta, like people, staying distant, wearing masks if they're unvaccinated for sure. And just being real cautious about, it's out there right now. Now, an individual who does get any strain can still be contagious to another person. So regardless of vaccination, if people have symptoms, they need to stay home because they can still give it to someone else, even if their symptoms are mild.
Thank you, Sarah. And one last question. I know this may be a little bit too premature, but do you foresee if increases of this of positive cases, do you foresee any closures, so to speak, for the county? And I speak for the county only. I know that this is not something anybody wants to hear, but is that a possibility again?
We are not talking about closures as our primary response. Okay. We are monitoring the hospital really closely. But our primary response is vaccination because that's the long-term solution. Closures are not a long-term solution. And we'd like to see COVID gone and done. That's our primary goal. And we don't want to distract the conversation away from the primary action that people can take. And so we want people to be careful. But if people are concerned, the first thing you should do is go get vaccinated. And the other reason it's important for people to be vaccinated is that the more people that are potential host for a virus in which they're not able to really battle it and get rid of it, like their immune system isn't responding and crushing it, then there's more opportunity for mutations. So far, the mutations that we've seen, the variants we've seen are more contagious, but they're not resistant to the vaccine. And they're not causing more severe illness. But we don't know what the next mutation might do. And so the faster we can get the population vaccinated and reduce those possible hosts, the more chance we have of not seeing a variant that is more deadly.
Thank you, Sarah. So what I take is that vaccination is a solution for us. So thank you. Appreciate your comments.
Absolutely. I do not see any hands raised. Well, Sarah, I want to thank you for coming and giving us this presentation. It's always very helpful for you to come and join us. Hopefully we'll see you soon. There'll be some new information that you might have. But absolutely, keep coming back whenever it's possible.
Will do. Thanks very much. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Arnoldo, I didn't want to catch you off guard, but did you want to do an introduction today for a new employee?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So joining us this evening, we have admin analyst Sarah Sarquiz, who's actually who's joining us tonight. And I know there's a lot of people here. So Sarah, I'm not too sure if you'd like to wave. And with that, so Sarah's a recent graduate of UC Merced. Sarah's originally from Burbank. She came up to Merced to attend college, graduated in political science in 3.5 years. So she's obviously extremely ambitious. And Sarah initially did not apply for the position in the city manager's office. However, after interviewing with some other positions, there's a few people said, hey, you should really meet Sarah. Well, we interviewed her and she elected to join us. We're extremely grateful. And with that, maybe I'll turn it over to Sarah if you'd like to say a couple of words.
Definitely, of course. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you, Arnoldo, for the introduction. He kind of told my whole life story, but I'll make it short and brief and repeat it a little bit. So my name is Sarah Sarquiz. I am an administrative analyst in the city administration office. I've been here for a little bit over a month now. Like Arnaldo said, I am originally from Burbank, but came here and found a home in the Central Valley, attending school in Merced. I decided to stay and not go home and pursue a career in public service. And I've been lucky to find my way down here in Madera, and been welcomed with nothing but smiles and open arms. And so I'm hoping to stay here and continue serving our residents in any department I can find my way to. So thank you, and it's nice to meet you all, and I hope you have a very good evening.
Welcome aboard. Fantastic.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right. We don't have any workshops tonight, but we will now move on to the consent calendar. Matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion and one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, a member of the public or a member of the council may request an item be removed from the consent calendar, and it will be considered separately. Alicia, do we have any members of the public wishing to, oh, wait a minute. That's the wrong script. Here we go. I will take it to my colleagues. Do we have any changes or additions to the consent calendar?
Mayor, I'd like to pull B8.
Pull for discussion or?
For discussion, yes.
B8? Okay. Are there any others? I'll wait for a motion from my colleagues.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item B8 for further discussion.
Thank
And
you.
I second it.
Was that you, Councilwoman Evans?
Yes, the second.
Motion to approve the consent calendar minus item B8 by Councilmember Rodriguez, and then seconded by Councilwoman Evans. Alicia, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Gallegos,
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councilmember Montes,
Yes.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Villegas,
Yes.
and Mayor Garcia.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously with 6 yes votes and 0 no votes.
All righty. Councilwoman Gallegos?
Yes, I would just like to commend my colleagues and our city staff on going to cover the cost of our police and public works for the Old Timers Day Parade. It's an annual thing that's happened for several years. I would also like to do some shout outs to Nick Salinas, Chief of Staff, the Chamber, and the Downtown Association. Right now, we are looking at a little bit of a low entry. So if you can get the word out that people need to sign up. And we have a couple of, I just say a few new bands that will be attending our Old Timers Day Parade that are not local. So bringing that band competition. So again, thank you for approving this and for our PD to be out there that day. Hopefully I see all my fellow colleagues on our fire truck or police vehicles, seeing the community on September 25th. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
And with that, I'd like to approve B8.
Second.
Motion to approve B8 by Councilwoman Gallegos, second by Mr. Rodriguez.
Yes.
Alicia, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Gallegos,
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councilmember Montes,
Yes.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Villegas,
Yes.
and Mayor Garcia.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously with 6 yes votes and 0 no votes.
Thank you very much. So we will now move on. There are no public hearings at this time under item C. We do have item D, petitions, bids, resolutions, ordinances, and agreements. Item D1, first reading and introduction of an ordinance amending the city's municipal code relating to cannabis. Mr. Rodriguez, I believe you have this one.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Before you this evening are 3 separate agenda items all pertaining to cannabis. items D1, D2, and D3. Separate action is required for all three items, considering that they are three different sets of either ordinances or resolutions. And with that, I'll be sharing my screen. I believe council can probably see my screen now.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. And so let me make a few adjustments here and I'll begin. So the very first item before you this evening is going to be the reading and introduction of an amendment to the recently adopted cannabis ordinance that council adopted back in June 16th, to be more specific. Item D2 is a proposed contract amendment and an extension of an existing contract with HDL for cannabis consulting services. Item D3 is considerations of guidelines pertaining to cannabis businesses. Again, action on each must be taken separately. And I do want to preface it by saying that council is not obligated to take action on any of these items tonight. If council prefers to give direction this evening, staff is more than happy to go back, refine any document, and we can always bring it back to council. The reason I say that is there are a lot of moving parts to cannabis. Council on Friday received fairly lengthy document packages pertaining to cannabis. They are not light reading. They're fairly dense. And I understand that when someone is reading a document in legal terms, sometimes it can be difficult to follow. And so with that, tonight's discussion, again, if council feels comfortable moving it forward, then that's okay. However, again, if council prefers to provide direction, that's okay as well. And we can always schedule it for future discussion. So in terms of background, and this pertains to all three items, I'll provide this for background and then I'll jump into each individual item. So going back roughly a year, and this is a repeat from the last meeting, the city did enter a contract with HDL on June the 24th. That's the first meeting where there was a discussion between council about potentially a business license tax regarding cannabis. On July the 15th of 2020, council at that time elected to place it on the general election ballot of November the 3rd, 2020. Fast forward to this year, the first part of January, council held two workshops. One, the first meeting of January, and then on January the 20th. On April the 24th, we did have a workshop to discuss potentially the number of cannabis permits and also to discuss what the approval process may look like. On May the 12th, council initiated a text amendment to the city's municipal code. May the 24th, the planning commission considered a text amendment to the municipal code, followed by on June the 7th, council considered that text amendment plus a second amendment to the city's municipal code. So there were changes to both the zoning code and the municipal code. And on June the 6th, council approved the regulatory ordinance. On August the 4th, council held a workshop to discuss procedures and workshops, or the procedures and guidelines, I apologize. All of that was coupled with 3 community meetings that were all held via Zoom. This was at I would say the peak of COVID, but it seems like we've been in the peak for a very long time. This goes back to late last fall, and we held 2 workshops in English, and we did hold one in Spanish. And this was in anticipation for the item being on the general election ballot of November the 3rd. So again, I briefly touched on this. The cannabis regulations are fluid. Council has heard me in the past indicate that I believe cannabis regulations should be treated, any guidelines or codes should be treated as living documents that reflect contemporary industry standards, but at the same time trying to make sure that we continue to protect our local community from any potential adverse impacts. Moving forward, almost with confidence, I can tell you that staff will be bringing back adjustments as necessary, because going back to something that Councilmember Montes has said in the past, sometimes you have unintended consequences. When you adopt a law and then you come back after the fact and say, you know what, that was a great idea at the time, but maybe something happened that we didn't intend for. So, and the first item this evening is just that. Council did adopt this ordinance. However, after going back and digesting it and after hearing additional discussion by both the council and the community, staff is recommending an amendment to the recently adopted cannabis ordinance. So tonight, it's the first reading, and it's an introduction of an amendment. So council this evening is not going to be taking formal action to adopt. Rather, any amendments to the ordinance or to the municipal code does require 2 readings. So if council feels comfortable, we would bring this back to the next council meeting. So currently, as written, the ordinance indicates that cannabis businesses must be located a minimum of 600 feet from sensitive uses as defined by the state. Those sensitive uses were codified in the city's municipal code. And generally, those include schools, either private or public, K through 12, parks, and daycare centers. And these would be daycare centers, not necessarily daycares operating out of single family homes. With that being said, the local jurisdictions do have the right to make exceptions. After council adopted the code, staff huddled and we started taking a look at some of the maps and where local businesses can potentially be permitted. And one of the things that we noted is a large swath of our industrial park is not necessarily a place where cannabis businesses would be permitted because of its proximity to Town and Country Park in the southwest part of our community. So some potential implications for that, it could potentially lead to a concentration of shops or industrial uses in other part of the community. And the other challenge is it could potentially artificially increase land values in other parts of the community because you're minimizing or you're limiting where potential businesses could be established. So when council adopted the existing code, so this is the current rule today, the council adopted the 600-foot rule. However, council did make some exceptions, specifically the downtown area, the Fresno River, because we do have a trail. Council exempted a number of parks, including Rotary Park on Gateway Drive, Courthouse Park, which is in the heart of the city, the Well Center, which commonly referred to as swimming pool park for those of us that grew up in Madera, and the Youth Center, the library, considering that it's a public facility, the fairgrounds, and the golf course. And so those places currently, the 600-foot rule does not apply to properties that are appropriately zoned within 600 feet of those properties. And so just to provide you a couple of illustrative maps, this map illustrates if the 600-foot rule were to be applied with no exclusions. So again, so what we attempted to capture here, schools, including private schools, so St. Joachim's is highlighted, and different parks and public facilities. And if you're within the bubble area, you would not be able to, a cannabis business is not permitted in the bubble diagrams. And then if you take a look at the lavender and purple colors, those are the industrial zone districts, and the orange and reddish colors are the commercial. So again, even if you have commercial property or industrial property and you're within the bubble diagram, cannabis businesses are not permitted. And so the council exempted some of them, and one thing you can tell that all of a sudden it opens up the city to a few additional parcels. So again, this is exempted if I can go back one, and this is the area, and our goal was to open it up primarily in downtown Madera, and then also to expand potential industrial users for cultivation or vertical integrated properties. However, one area that was not exempted is Town and Country Park, which I'm pointing to with my arrow, again, in the southwest part of the community. Town and Country Park is approximately 53 acres in area and serves as the city's community park. And as soon as my mouse cooperates, and so if council, so you can tell here at Town and Country Park, there's a large swath of land immediately to the south and a little bit to the east that would not be permitted to accommodate cannabis uses. If you go immediately to the north and immediately to the west, those are primarily residential, and cannabis uses are not permitted in residential properties. And so if council were to adopt the ordinance before you, the area around Town and Country Park would be permitted, and therefore it's no longer highlighted, because areas that are not highlighted are where it's permitted. So the area immediately to the south would be permitted or would be eligible for cannabis uses, and the area immediately to the east. Zooming in on this specific area, here's Lyons County Country Park in the middle. The areas highlighted I'll refer to it as a baby blue or North Carolina blue. Those are the parcels that would be excluded or that are currently excluded, so you cannot do cannabis uses on those properties. However, if council were to adopt the ordinance, the areas identified in blue would permit cannabis uses. So again, the driving force behind this is to allow greater opportunities for cannabis uses. As council is aware, one thing that we've heard from potential cannabis businesses is that Madera is business friendly. However, we have some challenges with parcelization or the location of buildings or the lack of buildings. And one thing that we attempted to do is we went back, we sharpened our pencils, and we try to look at opportunities to expand potential areas of business while at the same time making sure that we stay true to council's direction of protecting our neighborhoods and making sure that we don't have any adverse impacts. And so again, the area is largely surrounded by industrial, and that's why we thought that it would be appropriate to bring this proposal before council this evening. So with that being said, staff did prepare an initial study which resulted in a negative declaration pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act. So the recommendation this evening would be that council conduct a public hearing and waive the full reading of the ordinance amending the city's municipal code. And the second reading would come back before council at the next regularly scheduled meeting, which would be Wednesday, September the 15th. And with that, typically with ordinances, I'm not too sure if Hilda, you would like to add anything. And I should also add that David McPherson from HDL is here as well, as is John Thomason, who assisted city staff in the preparation of the initial study. Thank you.
Thank you, Arnoldo. You did a great job just summarizing everything and providing everyone with a detailed background. So we're all caught up and we don't have to do it 3 times on the 3 items, which is wonderful. Just a quick clarification. As far as the negative declaration under CEQA, it will also come to you at the second reading for approval, as council would need to approve the negative declaration under CEQA as well.
And so with that, Mayor, that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you. Absolutely. Alicia, do we have any members of the public wishing to either speak to this item, or do they have any written comments?
We do have a caller on the line, Mayor, with their hand raised.
Okay.
It's phone number ending 0084. Caller, if you unmute yourself.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor Garcia, council members, and staff. My name is Patrick Goggin. I'm an attorney from San Francisco, and I've been working on cannabis issues going back to 2005 in San Francisco, Northern California since 2009, state and nationally since 2016, and I served on the San Francisco Medical Cannabis Task Force from 2010 to 2011. I'm here to help you a little bit with some potential unintended consequences. But first, I want to compliment the mayor and city council and staff for doing a heck of a job. You've done God's work in establishing an outstanding cannabis ordinance. But I urge the consideration of 2 simple amendments to the vertical integration application process.
Excuse me,
the process,
sir, Mr. Goggin. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you. This is City Attorney Hilda Montoy. The manager introduced the 3 items, but we're going to, because they're so different as far as the action itself, we're going to take public comment for each one, and then each one will be acted on.
And I'm speaking to that item, City Attorney.
Okay.
The item is a potential amendment. It's amending the ordinance, and I'm speaking. I just said that I want to propose 2 simple amendments to the ordinance.
I understand.
So is this not the right agenda item?
Thank you for correcting that.
Okay, thank you. I apologize. I just wanted to get the point across. So if I could just complete my presentation and have ample time, I will keep it short. The ordinance that Madera has adopted is unique in that it achieves the objectives of transparency through public meeting and scoring minimums for non-retail vertical integration. This goes beyond what San Francisco, Oakland, Santa Rosa, and numerous jurisdictions throughout the state do. All of those have an administrative as-of-right process without public meetings or scoring vetting for non-retail uses. Madera goes further by, but Madera goes further by the public meeting and the scoring minimum vetting. But going to the city council for non-retail permits applications goes too far. There is no reason for going to the city council after staff vetting. There is no standards to follow in the ordinance, leaving the process fully vulnerable to arbitrary and capricious decisions. On the flip side, the city council does not and should not engage in pro forma rubber stamping, waste of time exercises. It's simply a waste of resources when the goals of transparency and quality control are achieved through the public meetings and minimum scoring vetting process. So I have a solution to present and offer it up. In section
I would just like to remind you, I would just like to remind you, you only have 3 minutes to speak, sir. Okay?
I appreciate it, Mayor, but I was interrupted, so I didn't have an opportunity to finish. So I have a few sentences to complete, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, so we do have our city clerk who put you back on the clock. So just to let you know, it's 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay,
go ahead and say your last couple of sentence.
I'm doing my best, Mayor. I'm doing my best. Thank you. So my proposed solution is at section 8-5.14, section G, and it should read, at the conclusion of the vetting process, the city manager shall prepare a report and add in, quote, for all retail applicants, end quote, for consideration by the city council. The second proposed amendment is in section H, and it would read, the city council may either deny or approve the final retail application candidates, and the sentence would continue. This is the middle path approach.
Okay,
requiring
Alicia, how much time?
Of non-retail applicants to go before the city council is surplusage and does not achieve any goals the process has not already achieved.
I'm gonna have to ask you to stop because we have run out of your 3 minutes. So we will move on to the next person. And I want to remind folks, we will provide you with the time allotted, but it is 3 minutes each. Do we have a next person, Alicia?
We do, Mayor. We have caller with phone number ending 6262.
Caller? Caller, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor and City Council.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello. Hi, my name is Roman, a small business owner there in the city of Madera. I am working with a team of us, a Mainstream Medicinal Club, and I want to speak on behalf of exclusion of the town, Lions Town and Country Park. I feel that that is necessary so we could be able to have options open for more opportunities towards getting a building in the city of Madera. So I'm glad that you guys are opening up the proposed exclusion of Lions Town and Country Park area, and I'm all for that. That's going to be great for us there in the city of Madera, so we could bring business, of course, in that part of town also. So I wanted just to give some input on that topic that we're talking about tonight, and also to possibly look into doing any type of changes for the equity process of the applications. I'm hoping that we could possibly look into touching bases on getting some of those requirements pushed back as you guys have it written up. And that's what I wanted to say today. And thank you so much for everything you guys have been doing to move this forward quickly.
Thank you. Hilda, do you want to make a clarification? Are we discussing zoning at this time?
The only thing you're discussing is the ordinance that's before you with one amendment that's recommended by your city manager concerning the park and exempting that area as well. There could have been discussions on other amendments during public comment. With respect to the procedures, that will be part of the third item on tonight's agenda concerning cannabis. So anything concerning procedures or criteria or guidelines or the number of permits to be issued for each category, as well as the fees, all that will be discussed at the third item.
Thank you. Do we have the next person, Alicia?
Mayor, I now have written comment.
Yes, go ahead.
The first one is from Kirk Katamian. As a kid, I went to many Bobby Sock softball games at Lions Park to watch my sister play. Having a dispensary so close to all kids is not a good idea. I am all for the local dispensary and the tax money that it will bring to the city, but kids come first. The rules have been made and a dispensary owners have followed them too late to change them. I feel someone is trying to slide this through at the last minute. I have seen this done before with the John Wells Youth Center. The funny part is I represent the building at 629 Yosemite, the old social services building, and the only building the rule would affect. Nobody had asked us how we felt or if we were even going to rent a dispensary. The owners have chosen to rent an adult daycare facility. This one is opposing this one is saying no dispensary, absolutely not, from Mole Martinez. And another one from Mole Martinez is Madera is going downhill already, and now it's just going to make things worse and worse. More since that park is for potheads already. A lot of stuff happens there. We don't need one in this town or any towns. Please don't. This is from Lisa Killian. I'm writing on behalf of families of Madera. Dispensary should not be placed near a park that houses family events, sports, playgrounds, etc. I understand that it is legal in California and that tax revenues are a huge advantage. However, Madera has many other industrial locations that a dispensary could be placed. Place the dispensary away from a park that is family centered. This one is from Sam. Please do not allow dispensary near any park. Our children go there to play. It already smells like skunks at the park now. Please don't make it any easier. From Sam Jones. This is from Felicia Silva. Ladies and gentlemen of Madera City Council, as a mother of 2 baseball athletes, I strongly disagree with allowing retail cannabis store near our children's playground, Lions Park. I ask that council consider our children and think of the effects of having a dispensary near our baseball fields. This is from Adriana Chavez. I'm born and raised in Madera, and I think it would be a great disservice to the people to allow a cannabis club near Town and Country Park. We all bring our children to this park. This is from, actually it's an anonymous. As a resident of the area proposed and a parent, I object to cannabis business near Town and Country Park. I have others, Mayor. Let me double check these. I think these are for a different item on our agenda in regard to cannabis, but not particularly this item.
Okay.
And yeah, these others, one more from Jedi Gold. As a parent and City of Madera resident, I object to any cannabis business located near or around Town and Country Park. And those would be all for item D1, Mayor.
Thank you, Alicia. And thank you for your diligence in trying to get all that sorted out. I now have, I'm going to close public comment on this one item. And then I'll open up public comment later for the other items. In council chambers, Mr. Montes, go ahead.
Did I get your attention, Mayor? Sorry, I was
I saw the hand.
I was trying to move as much as I could. So I do have a couple questions. And part of it was part of Mr. Gogan, I think I'm saying his name, his comment, although the concept is something that, you know, I've been thinking about as well. And I've mentioned it at past council meetings. The execution maybe wasn't there on his part tonight. But is that something that would be appropriate? And I guess this is a question for Hilda and Arnoldo. If we can talk about that, I know this is, there isn't an actual text for that, but is that something that we can talk about, you know, especially when we're talking about the unintended consequences? That's why this item is here today. But would we be able to talk about the final approval? I believe that it's a little bit of a holdover, this 6-514 G and H from the conversations that we've had in the past. Go ahead, Hilda, I'm sorry.
Thank you. No, thank you. So no, the request for Mr. Goggin would have been more appropriate, and that's why I did interrupt, because I knew he was going to talk about the procedures and the procedures and guidelines. There have been, Mr. Goggin has submitted an email to Mr. Rodriguez concerning his disagreement with having the city council be the final decision maker. And I can address that whole aspect when we get to the procedures. So I would recommend we await that till when we get to the procedures, which is your third item. And of course, at the end of your meeting, city council members can bring up other items that they'd like to bring back. So in the event there's a decision to return with a different code amendments, that can always be done. But it would be relevant to, for example, when we get to the procedures, you could go ahead and approve them as they are, or you could say we'd like to hold off because we need to have the ordinance amended, and I can discuss that further at that time.
Okay.
But right now, we're just talking about one section
Okay.
of the code that's being proposed for amendment.
Okay, so it would be more appropriate to address it there.
Yes.
Okay, and if council chooses to, they can tonight.
Well, they can't make the change tonight, but they can, yeah, I'll explain it at that time. So we keep the three separate.
Okay, and as far as the item that we have before us tonight, I do believe this was kind of an oversight. There are other facilities, just like our city manager explained, that have been exempted. A lot of people came out and said, hey, we want these areas exempted. It's an industrial area. I know that you wouldn't be able to do a retail cannabis there, but for vertically integrated business. Is that correct? That would go to Arnoldo and...
So that is correct, Councilmember Montes. However, immediately to the east of County Country Park, on the east side of Schnorr, there is commercially zoned property. So a retail establishment would be permitted to go there. With that being said, it could be council's direction to allow industrial but prohibit retail. One of the principal reasons behind the proposal this evening was an oversight of the large industrial park to the south of County Country. I'm going to say south and southeast of the park. There's a very large industrial park in that area that in my humble opinion would be an appropriate place to have cannabis there. With that being said, you can have a retail in a vertically integrated shop, which council's discussed in the past. So you could, in theory, have retail within a vertical shop proximate to County Country. But again, if council's prefers, you can always say, well, we're okay with part of the ordinance or something along those lines. Well, we don't want the retail immediately to the east in the commercial district. And I know that begins to muddy the waters a little bit, and that's a carve out. But again, that's council always has that prerogative as well. And if I misspoke, Hilda, please tell me to stop and I'll be quiet.
Okay. No, that
I think she
clears it
gave
up.
you a thumbs up.
So for, and also discussed the recommendation, and hopefully I'm not spoiling anything for anybody. Even with the vertically integrated in item 3, there is a recommendation to allow offsite for vertically integrated. So that could solve that problem if council chooses to. So I think for that reason, it's mainly for the industrial. It's not for the retail aspect of it. Why would we be doing this exemption? I'd be in favor of it. Those are my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Garcia. So, just a discussion that's been had over this particular item. Would it behoove the council then to move maybe item D3 before we touch on this subject or make a recommendation? Only because it seems like they correlate, and we may have some questions that arise before we make a decision here, a recommendation regarding the council guidance and resolution as it pursuant to the ordinance.
Mayor, if I may step in, if that would be appropriate, Councilmember Rodriguez brings up an excellent point. There are a lot of parts of the ordinances that bleed over into one another, and so maybe it could potentially be appropriate to postpone this item, move on to item D2, and then move on to item D3, and then come back to D1, because there is a lot of overlap between the 3 ordinances in terms of unintended consequences. Again, that could potentially muddy the waters, but that's why we have Hilda here to keep us on track.
No pressure.
Yeah.
No pressure, Hilda.
Yeah.
The only thing would be that if you, it's here for introduction today. If you make any changes or decide to take a different course of action, you would have to basically come in with a new ordinance and potentially new CEQA as well.
So one of the, while we're on this topic too.
Hold on a second, Mr. Councilmember. Hilda, would you say that again in layman's terms?
So as you know, your ordinances are introduced at one meeting and then adopted at a second meeting. If you make any changes to the ordinance tonight, then to the ordinance that's before you and that's been assessed for environmental purposes, then it would have to come back next time for reintroduction if you make substantive changes. And if you go beyond the subject matter that's before you in the ordinance, there is a potential that there would be a new requirement to do more CEQA analysis.
Yeah, that's fine, but I think Councilmember Montes had touched on a item on item D3 that correlates in respects to a different location when you have industrial size. And some of the comments that came before us are requesting that we don't have any retail cannabis dispensaries, but I do want someone in staff maybe to elaborate the sensitive use and what their footage, or what's the distance between that, and how the local government can. I'm not sure if we can get away from what the state requirements are. So I just wanted to make sure if someone can clear that. I don't think the sensitive use parks, are they part of sensitive use?
They are, Councilmember Rodriguez, and I believe the most, probably the best person to respond would be David McPherson. David, if you wouldn't mind joining us.
Good evening, Council. So it's not so much the parks, but it's where youth activities are, where primary use are. So because there's use activities there, the way it's presented, that it appears that there, and you correct me if there's the activities for youth are not there. Appears that they are.
Thank you. But there was an excellent point brought up by Councilmember Montes in regards to the item that we have before us. D3 also talks about a possible change in the non-retail, where you can apply for one. It doesn't have to necessarily be at that same location. So it appears that it could be a solution. Is that something that we can discuss, Hilda? And that's why I had requested to see if we can bring item D3 before us.
Oh, yes. And I'm sorry if I misspoke. You can certainly bring it before you. I'm just letting you know of potential consequences. Yes. You can bring up D3 and hold off on any action on D1.
And I just mean table it for, not necessarily another meeting, just flip it,
Right. Until after D3.
Correct. Thank you.
Does that require a motion?
You can, well, it could be consensus, but if it's unclear, a motion would be in order. If everybody agrees by consensus, if you have 4 people agree to do that as a courtesy to the 2 council members requesting it, that would be fine.
Okay.
As a formality, Mr. Mayor, as a formality, if you like, I can certainly.
No, it's okay. Council member, go ahead. You got 4 thumbs up. So, Mr. Rodriguez, would you like to go down to item D3?
Would it be appropriate, Mayor, to do item D2 and then we'll go to D3, because D3 I believe is more closely correlated to D1, correct?
Yes, I would recommend that as well.
Okay, that's fine. Then we'll move on to we'll table this item until later, and we'll go on to item D2.
Thank you, Mayor. So the item before you is a renewal of a contract with HDL, and it's also a proposal for additional services regarding cannabis. And I believe council can see my screen here that I'm sharing. So the original contract with HDL was signed by council on May the 20th of 2020. That contract had a term limit of 1 year and a not to exceed number of $29,000 or $29,700. The proposal this evening, which I'll get into a little bit, extends some of that, and also there's a proposal for additional services. So again, the existing agreement, $29,700, was for the development of guidelines, which are before council this evening as item D3, and it's also to place it on the ballot, which was done last November. So with that being said, staff is recommending that the council extend the existing agreement through September the 1st, 2023. However, there's no modification to either the services or the price. So again, the contract dollar amount is exactly the same. The services, the scope of work is identical. The only thing that we're recommending extending is the time. The primary reason for that is when we had agreed to the 1 year time limit, we were of the belief that we would have been done, but obviously COVID happened and some other things got in our way, so things got extended a little bit. So staff's proposal is to extend the term of the agreement, but the agreement itself, with the exception of the date, is identical. There are no changes. The second part of this item is to enter into an amendment which would provide for additional services from HDL to the city of Madera. This is assuming that council agrees to adopt the guidelines to begin to accept applications. That's not to say that the applications would start tomorrow. However, at some point, what we'd like to do is we would like to have a contract in place. So if council decides to begin to accept applications, that staff is well prepared to begin to accept them and to process those applications. So as part of the scope of services provided by HDL at staff's request, there are 4 phases in the scope of work. Phase 1 would be the screening of applications for completeness. This would be a partnership with team HDL and city staff. HDL would serve as the project lead on phase 1. On phase 2, HDL would review the applications. As council is aware, the applications for cannabis are a couple of hundred pages. They're technical, they're dense, and there's a lot of fluid regulations at the state where guidelines change regularly, and we would definitely want someone with some expertise in cannabis to assist the city to help expedite the applications. So HDL, as part of phase 2, would compile a report. They would place the top scores on an eligibility list, which would be considered at a public meeting. Phase 3, staff would conduct the public hearing. However, HDL would assist staff at the meeting for any technical items that may arise during those public meetings. And then phase 4, that's when the items would be brought before the council to decide who would be granted a permit, and HDL would assist staff in that process. Again, a lot of this is for technical support. So in terms of what would it cost? So HDL is proposing a flat fee of $5,900 to review every application. The cost to accept an application is going to be a little bit higher, and those costs are outlined on item D3 this evening, not on item D2. However, so the submittal fee per applicant, it's roughly $11,000. It's actually slightly less than $11,000. Of that $11,000, HDL would receive $5,900. It would be a flat fee, so this is from the beginning to the end. So every application HDL would review on the city's behalf, they would receive a flat fee of $5,900, regardless of how many hours it takes. And that includes all of the items. This table was provided in your packet that was submitted. The one thing that is not included on this is a supplemental background check, which is a part of item D3, which was $300 per applicant. So again, the item before council this evening is to enter into an agreement with HDL for a flat fee to review every application received of $5,900. If council were to approve this item this evening, and if council elects not to accept applications, the city would not be obligated to pay HDL any monies, considering that they would not be reviewing any applications. A couple of things to note though, even after hypothetically, say a year from now, there are businesses in the community that are operating and they have a cannabis permit, there are some additional services that the city's probably going to require because there's ongoing audits and there's ongoing inspections that are required by state law for cannabis businesses. That's not before council this evening. However, if you take a look at your packet, there is language in there about potentially some ongoing services or assistance that the city is going to more than likely need. So again, the item before council this evening, it's a recommendation to extend the existing contract. There's not an increase to the city, and the scope of services remain exactly as the original contract for May 2020, and then also to amend the scope of services to include some new services for the review of applications when submitted, and the application cost would be $5,900, which the city would collect from the applicant, and the city would remit those costs over to HDL. So with that concludes my presentation on item D2. Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Alicia, do we have any members of the public wishing to speak on item D2?
Sorry, Mayor, we have 2 hands raised. I'm not sure.
If we could just remind folks who would want to speak, this is on item D2.
I do not have any written public comment for this item, Mayor, but we do have a hand raised. I'm not sure if it's in regard to this item.
If we can call on them and then ask them if they're going to speak on item D2.
Caller ending in 0084, is this in regard to item D2? If so, please unmute yourself.
No, I was just on D1, and then I would like to speak on D3 as well, but not D2. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is that the only one?
That is the only one, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I will now close public comment on item D2. We'll ask for discussion from my colleagues on item D2. Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. Arnoldo, I think you explained this well, so thank you again for your presentation. But just to reiterate that the cost of these this flat fee cost is the cost recovery of what we charge for the permitting or the application process, correct?
So the application is going to be higher than this, which we'll discuss in item D3, but the cost of HDL to the city is $5,900. And so the city would collect it as a pass-through and then give the same dollar amount to HDL.
Perfect. I wanted to make sure that that's what I read and that's what I heard. So thank you again, Arnoldo, for elaborating on that.
Absolutely.
Any other colleagues wanting to speak on this item? If not, I'll close it and we'll go for a vote. All right.
I move to make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve item D2 by Councilwoman Evans and second by Councilwoman Ortega Villegas. Alicia, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Gallegos,
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councilmember Montes,
Yes.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Villegas,
Yes.
and Mayor Garcia.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously with 6 yes votes and 0 no votes.
Okay. So, Mr. Rodriguez, you, council member, you wanted to speak first on D3 before D1?
Yes, but if you allow the city manager to cover the staff report, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor. So the item before you, I'll share my screen one more time. So the item before you this evening is item D3, and this is in regards to cannabis business permits and the guidelines, and more specifically, it's the procedure guidelines, the review criteria, the fees, and the number of permits that would be allowed in the city of Madera. So this item is a follow-up to our more recent discussion on August the 4th regarding the same item, where staff received feedback from council. And what we attempted to do is go back, we sharpened our pencils, and we attempted to capture the direction of council. With that being said, there are 3 resolutions before council this evening. There's the first item. It's the number and type of cannabis permits that may be issued in the city of Madera. Item number 2 is establishing fees for cannabis, and item number 3 is establishing procedure guidelines and review criteria. Let me state, before I jump into the 3 items, and let me preface that staff attempted to capture a lot of discussion points going back to the first week of January. If staff for any reason misinterpreted that, then tonight may potentially be a good opportunity to identify those. Again, I believe someone, a community member, had told me that we've discussed cannabis about 30 hours before council. I haven't done the math, but as council is aware, I believe this is our 12th meeting since last summer. And so again, we attempted to capture council's direction, but if we missed, we would most certainly appreciate any feedback. So the next 4 slides are tables. These tables were included in your staff packet, in your agenda packet. And what I attempted to do here is break them down. One thing that I attempted to do was capture the essence of every business type or every application type. And hopefully I did just that. So the first item, and so I'll cover the second row here, is standard applications. So standard applications is your standard retail, not also micro business. In the staff report, it's a little clearer, but for illustrative purposes, to make the font large enough, I consolidated on this table. We have social equity, and then we have vertically integrated. Vertically integrated for purposes of illustrative, just to consolidate, also includes distribution, cultivation, standalone cultivation, and anything else that's not social equity or that's not standard applications. So one thing that that during the past couple of months, council has discussed by right versus hybrid versus merit, and a lot of it's semantics. However, depending on what lens you're looking at it through, I think some of us, myself included, may potentially have a slightly different interpretation. I believe the more appropriate term potentially could have been competitive versus non-competitive. And a competitive process means that we have a limited number of permits that the council is going to issue. And so for this first one, the question is the standard retail application competitive? And it is competitive. For social equity, it's also competitive. And it's competitive because council has directed staff that to write an ordinance that's going to limit the number of permits. For the last one, which again, vertically integrated / cultivation / distribution, council has indicated that it's not competitive. You're competing with yourself, but not against other applicants, because there's not a limit. It's an unlimited number, and it's about quality control. So the maximum number of permits, standard retail 6, social equities 2, and again, vertically integrated is 0. I'm sorry, it's not 0, it's unlimited. And then for all 3, we would have an informational kickoff meeting. That informational kickoff meeting is to allow potential applicants to inquire and ask all the questions that they may like. At that meeting would be city staff, including David from HDL to assist us. It also includes a criminal background check for all 3 categories. So the very first step, which is almost like pre-phase 1, is a zoning verification. And the reason we would want to do that is to make sure that wherever someone is proposing something before they apply, so this is prior to submittal of an application, that the property they've selected is appropriately zoned. And so that's required across the board. And then moving on to phase 1, all 3 applicants would have to go through phase 1, which again is the preliminary evaluation of application. And this is where David and his team would assist the city. So moving on to the second part, it's the scoring of applications, which is phase 2. Same header, standard, social equity, and vertically integrated. And this is where we identify the number of points per category. So we have business plan, 400 points across the board, labor, equity, diversity, and inclusion plan, safety plan, security, qualification of owners, neighborhood compatibility, community benefits, and proposed location. What we attempted to do here is capture the desires of council. Early on, council may recall that we had a lot of discussion about some of the community benefits, and so you can tell that community benefits is more heavily weighed than some of the other categories, and some of that was based on council feedback that we want to ensure that businesses that are coming to Madera, that there's a direct benefit to our community members. And then proposed location is weighted a little bit different, and social equity, there are no points allocated to that because of some of the challenges with social equity permits. They still have to be appropriately zoned and appropriately located, but it's not going to be weighted in terms of points. As long as they have proper zoning, that would be an appropriate location. And if I misspeak at all, Hilda and David, just feel free to jump in. So the maximum number of points per application. Under standard application, if you add up all the points here, if I did my math right, it should add to 3,000. If you gain every point on social equity, it's 2,700, and on vertically integrated, it's also 3,000. The minimum number of points needed to advance to phase 3. For standard applications, it's 2,700 points or 90%. Social equity, it's 2,430 points or 90%. However, for vertically integrated, what we attempted to do is reflect the state guidelines to make sure that anyone that can pass, that meets our minimum thresholds, will meet the thresholds as established by the state of California. One thing that we've been conscious about is if we set our thresholds too low, a local business could potentially get a permit from the city, but then when they go to the state may kick it back and say, guess what? You don't meet the state's minimum qualifications or thresholds. And hopefully I captured that correctly, David. So here, the number's lowered to 80% or 2,400 points. So again, it's unlimited, and we've also lowered the number of points. And then moving on to phase 3 would be the community meeting. And this community meeting would be held by city staff. More than likely, David would join us. And it's to solicit feedback to make sure that we didn't miss anything in the process. As we all know, sometimes there's things that a community will tell you that staff may be just simply be unaware of. And that's again to solicit community feedback. So moving on to phase 4, the action. The minimum number of applications that will advance to phase 4. The standard application is a minimum of 10. Council may recall during our last meeting on August the 4th, we had a clause that said, however, the city has a sole discretion of increasing that number. If you have a lot of people that are right on the cusp or they're tied, then the council can obviously consider more than 10, but a minimum of 10 would be forwarded for council consideration. Same thing with social equity 10. And on vertically integrated, there's no minimum number of applicants because again, there's an unlimited number of applications or permits that are going to be granted by the city. City council interview. Standard applications, there's an interview process. It's done in public. for both standard applications, retail as social equity, but there's not a formal interview process for vertically integrated. Within the decision-making body, and this is one of the items that the attorney from San Francisco spoke about a few minutes ago, and I think this is one of the items that staff has received some additional feedback in the past couple of days that I believe merits some additional guidance or some additional discussion from council to make sure that staff appropriately captured the desires of council. So right now, under retail, it would be forwarded to City Council for a decision, social equity, City Council, and the ordinance that council approved back on June the 17th indicates that vertically integrated items, in terms of staff's interpretation, as well as your legal counsel, is that the City Council has authority to approve that. Social equity applications, this would be required to comply with Exhibit B, which is attached to your staff report. Standard applications are not required. Social equity applications are, and then vertically integrated are not. The part on the bottom is a footer on the table, so I simply added it for illustrative purposes. And that simply states that under vertically integrated application, you have to have a minimum of 3 non-retail cannabis permits in order to automatically qualify for a retail permit, but you do need a minimum of 20,000 square feet of canopy area of cultivation or of grow. So the one area that's come up recently, and I know I've gone back and I've watched some of the videos from previous council meetings. I'll admit I have not watched all 30 hours of them. Is for vertically integrated / cultivation, is the decision being made by the city council or the city manager? I know that I have watched some of the videos and there was discussion by council, but a lot of the discussion by council did not evolve around the vertically integrated. A lot of the discussion was around the retail applications and the social equity, more specifically the retail applications. Staff's interpretation right now as written would be that it'd be city council. However, again, if staff misinterpreted council's direction, staff would simply ask the council to provide further direction, and we would be more than happy to go back and update the ordinance. And so with that, I'm going to keep going. I suspect, though, we'll come back to this item later on, either by Hilda or myself or council. So a couple of things that have come up that we've attempted to clarify in the guidelines are social equity applications. Staff received an inquiry as to why is a social, why should the city carve out social equity applications? And again, the goal of a social equity application is to recognize and address long-term impacts that federal and state cannabis enforcement policies that have specifically had on low-income families. It's designed to support equal opportunity in the cannabis industry by making cannabis business ownership opportunities more accessible to people that were negatively impacted by previous regulations or previous laws. And then the other thing we should add is social equity applications will be screened initially prior to the retail. And the reason for that is if an applicant submits a social equity application and they are not eligible, we don't want to throw them out and say, well, good luck. What we want to do is at least provide them an opportunity to apply for a retail application. So again, that's why social equity applications would be screened initially prior to retail, simply to provide them an opportunity to continue the process. Right now, as prepared, our ask of HDL was to provide the city with a sample ordinance of industry standards of what qualifies as a social equity applicant or an application. And these are industry standards. It's currently a resident in the county of Madera for a minimum of 5 years. If you were arrested after November the 5th of 1996 and convicted of a cannabis crime in the county, the owner is currently defined as an individual or entity who has identified as owning 51%, and then household income at or less than the county area median pursuant to the U.S. Census Bureau based on the more recent updated numbers. Council may recall that these numbers for one person at the last meeting was approximately 41,000. Those numbers based on the latest information that I believe Dave just got a hold of late last week. These are the latest numbers that identify low income for Madera County. And that's also outlined in your staff report. Another item that's come up over and over during our discussions with council is, must all elements occur on the same parcel, specifically to vertically integrated applications? And a couple of items have come up to say, well, Madera's a little limited in terms of spaces for vertical integration because there's very few buildings available in our community, which is great and bad at the same time. So one thing we attempted to do is address that by adding language to say that that businesses for vertically integrated permits may consist of a single parcel or multiple parcels, which must be adjacent, abutting, or contiguous and meet ownership requirements under the ordinance. So when we first talked about this, we were talking that it had to be a single parcel. What we've attempted to do is open it up to allow for greater opportunity for business owners to say you can be on adjacent parcels. The parcels themselves may be owned by different people or by different companies. However, as long as the holder of the cannabis permit has control of both of those, that would be appropriate. And again, this was in response to some of the feedback we were hearing from the community. Vertically integrated applications. This item before you is going to be new for council, and this was something that staff is proposing. May the retail shop be located on a separate parcel specific to vertically integrated applications. And initially, council may recall that we discussed having it all under one permit. However, after some additional kind of racking our brains around this, this was initially when we were thinking it was going to be a competitive process. After council's direction that the vertically integrated is going to be non-competitive and that there's going to be an unlimited number of permits, we're thinking that maybe it could be potentially appropriate to separate the retail apart from everything. However, the retail still has to comply with all of the other standards, but the retail component itself would not be subject to the 6 retail permit licenses, because again, they still have to meet all the criteria of the 20,000 square feet of cultivation. And what this really does, this opens up additional opportunities for business owners. Again, this goes back to some of the concerns we've heard from community members, potential applicants saying we can't find buildings that are large enough. So what we attempted to do is say, if you have buildings that are close to each other for the cultivation, the manufacturing, the distribution, those, if they're adjacent to each other, you're okay. And then you can separate the retail and you can put the retail in a whole another part of the community as long as you meet the zoning requirements. And again, the goal here, going back to something that Councilmember Camontes has used in the past, trying to create strategic advantages for our community to provide additional entrepreneurship opportunities for our community members. The other thing is cultivation is only permitted, and I'm saying cultivation, I'm taking great liberty with the word cultivation. That includes manufacturing, cultivation, and processing. It's only permitted in industrial districts. One of the challenges, if you start to analyze where those parcels are located, some of the parcels are not located on principal commercial corridors. They lack parking because they were developed as warehouses, not necessarily retail sites, and they're not served by public transit. And one of the things is we obviously want to provide equal accessibility to our community. We have a lot of community members that heavily rely on public transit, specifically Madera Metro. And if they're not on those corridors and if they're tucked away in industrial areas, it may be a challenge for those people to visit those businesses, specifically for medicinal purposes, because some of them are they're challenged in terms of walkability, or they're restricted to walkers or to wheelchairs. And the other thing is, from having visited and studied cultivation, one thing that continues to come up is the concern by cultivators of having visitors at their establishment. One thing that, I'm not going to say all cultivators are like this, but one thing from talking to cultivators, one thing that they've identified is a concern, a safety concern. And they're saying, we like Madera, we like everything about it. We like that Madera is going to allow retail as long as you have a minimum of 20,000 square feet of cultivation. That's great, but we don't want visitors. We don't want the retail part to be part of our establishment because we don't want people knowing that we're here. We want to fly under the radar. We want to do our cultivation, but we just don't want to attract attention to ourselves. And so that's one reason that staff is proposing that the retail part, as part of a vertically integrated application, could potentially be separate. And I think it addresses some of the concerns we've heard from community members. The other item that merits some discussion is canopy area and what that means. This goes back to an item that we've heard a couple of callers call about, to say we cannot find buildings that are 20,000 square feet or 25,000 square feet. So what we've taken is we've taken a multi-pronged approach. We've said the buildings can be contiguous on separate parcels. We're saying you can have retail somewhere else, but we're also clarifying that vertical farming is permitted. And I understand that the photo here is not of cannabis. I'm not too sure what that is. I'm going to say it's lettuce or something else, or kale. But the concept of vertical farming is gaining in popularity. I understand it's very popular in Western Europe because of space limitations. And so vertical farming is more popular. And again, the goal here is canopy area, not necessarily trying to get a 20,000 square foot building. So it's 20,000 square feet of canopy area. So this is something we talked a short time ago. There's also another resolution in this item, because again, there's 3 different resolutions with this one, and this was the processing fees. This is an item that we've heard from community members to say, city, how much are you going to charge? And so item D2 that council just approved was the HDL fee of $5,900 per application. That's a flat fee. The city would collect it. We would remit that to HDL. The city's application fee for our time, which includes city staff time, the public notice, city council meetings, and legal counsel, would be $4,091 per application. This was assuming that we would receive a minimum of 20 applications, by the way. And so we had to assume how many applications in order to do a cost recovery analysis, because one thing that we've told the community is we're going to have a cost recovery analysis as part of cannabis to make sure that the city's not losing money. The zoning verification is a letter of $187. That would be done prior to phase 1, making sure that they have the appropriate zoning. A background check, that money would be paid directly through HDL through an online portal. So that's $300 for the owner. And then we also have live scan, which is another way of saying fingerprints. So live scan is a process, and that's $73. So the total amount for application would be $10,551.50. The city of which would receive $4,091 and then $187 for the application. And that would be per applicant. However, with that being said, if an applicant would not be successful in obtaining a permit, the money is not refundable because the work itself has already been done, including having HDL review the application, which on average, every application takes a minimum of 25 hours. They're long applications, they're dense, and they do take a lot of work. So the recommendation, and I understand that we're probably going to go back to a couple of parts. It's either provide guidance or clarification, or council is always at liberty to adopt. And again, we have 3 resolutions before council this evening. One of them is for the number of permits, the 6, 2, and the unlimited, the resolution establishing the fees, and then the third one is the policies and procedures. And I see Hilda has her hand up, so I'll be quiet and I'll turn it over to Hilda. You're on mute, Hilda.
Thank you. Please complete your presentation, Arnold. I just wanted to clarify something once you're done.
I'm actually all done, Hilda. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mayor, may I?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to underscore that that with respect to the third part, the guidelines and the criteria, those took a lot of time and effort on the part of Mr. Rodriguez, Mr. McPherson, and myself. We took to heart all the various questions and issues and lack of clarity that may have been raised at the last meeting by some of you council members, as well as questions that had been received by Mr. Rodriguez. And so as we reviewed the questions and we would say, can this be done? And so we always went back to the ordinance. So because that is the law, that is your local law regarding the cannabis regulations. And we always went back to the ordinance. So all those instances where Mr. Rodriguez pointed out that we decided that the stacking was okay, that contiguous buildings was okay, et cetera, those are all issues that were consistent with the ordinance. So staff, Mr. Rodriguez, in the end, after getting my advice, and he makes more of the policy recommendations, said, yes, I can recommend that. If it's legal, then I will. And that's what he's done. So I just wanted to underscore that in those instances where there may be disagreement, and that's with respect to the issue of the council making the final decision. There were, as you recall, Mayor and Council, many meetings where lots of issues were discussed, including who makes the final decision. And at the end of the day, and by final formal action, by your introduction, and then by adoption of the regulatory ordinance, the city council said, we make the final decision. So when we were looking at the regulations and the criteria and the guidelines, that's why we said in that matrix that Mr. Rodriguez presented and in the guidelines themselves that the city council makes a final decision. And I can answer questions as far as how the council makes decisions, et cetera, but that is, the guidelines are consistent with the ordinance. Having said that, and as Mr. Rodriguez has noted, you're the legislative body, and if you determine that you wish to make changes to the ordinance, you can do that. And it is a process, as you know, to go prepare the ordinance and then introduce it and adopt it. And I can answer any other questions that you may have. I don't know, Mr. McPherson wants to add anything before we.
The only thing, if I may, Mayor, is that we did have inquiries regarding nurseries, that it was not clear of where they stood as far as in the ordinance. And nursery is a form of a license, a type 4 license of cultivation. So for those that may have got questions, they're not clear, it's cultivation. We don't consider nursery separate. It's just a form of cultivation for that purpose of the vertical integrated process.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, so Mayor, if I may just add one point, if that's appropriate.
Absolutely.
I think staff did an excellent job, and that's not to pat myself on the back, but really that's the credit of Hilda and David of capturing the direction of City Council. I do appreciate where some of the discussion points have come up recently regarding the deciding body on vertical integration cultivation, if it's the City Council versus city staff. Like I said during my presentation, I have gone back and I have listened to some of the discussion. I have not listened to all 30 hours. However, I appreciate and I understand where staff could have asked for probably greater clarity. But again, some of these meetings, they went a long time. A lot of the focus was not on vertical integration, rather it was on retail and social equity. And again, if staff misinterpreted council's direction, then we would be more than happy to go back and reassess that. But I can appreciate where individuals said, well, that's not what was said. And because like I said, I've gone back and I listened to it, and I think one of the reasons that happened, and this is not to point fingers, but again, this was a very organic and robust discussion. I think the phrase merit versus by right, staff should have done a better job of clarifying that. And what I tried capturing here tonight, instead of using that phrase, I try to use the word competitive. However, the reason I say that is because, again, the word merit versus by right versus administrative, I think they were used intermittently. And I think depending on who you ask, the meaning of each of those phrases or terms had the definition was slightly different. And I think that has led to potential little bit of confusion. And for that, I do apologize. However, again, we try to capture the essence of what we thought council was instructing staff to do. So with that, I'll turn it back over to council. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Rodriguez. I just want to ask Hilda one more time. The item D3 before us includes the phrase, the city council will make the final decision on all three components across the board, correct?
Yes, consistent with the ordinance that you've already adopted. All three procedures for all three types of permits have council being the final decision-making body. And as everyone's noted, you can change your mind on that. But yes, as it stands today, that is the case. Council makes the final decision.
And if you, for folks who are listening, in order to, if the council was going to make the changes to that item, what is the procedure?
Wow, there's loud music by the federal courthouse here. So if the council were to, well, there's three parts to the resolution. So there could be two parts that you say, we're fine with those two parts. And if you want to change the part concerning the procedures and guidelines and criteria in any way, changing the procedures, you would just say, let's carve that out and bring it back and add more changes. And that would be generally a simple fix, and we would come back and make those changes at the next meeting. However, if the changes that you request after reviewing these resolutions are such that they are not consistent with the current ordinance, then we would need to go back and amend the ordinance first, and then bring you procedures that comply with the revised ordinance.
Thank you. I'm now going to go to public comment regarding item D3. Council Chambers, I see your hand, but I'm going to allow public comment first. So we will now open public comment. Alicia, can we start again with the public comment? Well, we haven't had public comment on D3 yet. If we could open that up now.
Okay, we have a caller, phone number ending 0084. If you would please unmute yourself.
And remember that public comment is 3 minutes, please. Identify yourself.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, City Council, Patrick Goggin. Regarding the vertical integration applications, I've still not heard any reason for going back to the City Council after staff vetting. I reiterate, there are no standards to follow, leaving the process vulnerable to arbitrary and capricious decisions. I've presented alternatives to amending the ordinance, and that would be in section 6-5.14 G and H to specify that that's only for retail applications. However, I have another alternative that does not require amending the ordinance. Section 6-5.14H specifically says the City Council may either deny or approve the final candidates. That specifically provides the City Council right now with discretion to go in and amend the review procedures and direct staff and indicate that it does not want to approve or deny vertical integration applications because they've already been vetted, they've already met quality control. There are barriers to entry for the 20,000 square foot limitations on minimums. Every possible interest and goal has been achieved of the City Council through the vetting and the scoring process. You've created a wonderful ordinance. It's a middle path. You don't need to go back to City Council, and you can do it in your review procedures as well as amending the ordinance. The choice is up to you. You have discretion. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else, Alicia, from the public?
We have caller phone number ending 6590. Caller, please unmute yourself. Caller, if you'd like to speak, please unmute yourself. Phone number ending 6590. Okay, Mayor, I do have written public comment if you'd like to move on to that.
Yes, go ahead, Elise.
This is from Suleiman Javed. I would like, first of all, to thank the council for all the time and effort put into getting the commercial cannabis ordinance passed and moving it forward with no delays. That was my timer, excuse me. We are requesting that there should be some points awarded only to local applicants. Many other cities have done this in the application process, which is scored in the similar manner. The next public comment is from John Rodriguez. In regard to the Cannabis Social Equity Program, the person applying should have a minimum 30% ownership of the business and has been a true resident of Madera for 5 years. Local people applying should also get extra points in the application process. This is from Ariana Valdez. I'm emailing you today in regards to the commercial cannabis ordinance. Anything we could do to encourage and support our locals rather than out of town and state corporations would be amazing. Many large non-local corporations are taking advantage of Madera by tying up properties by purchasing multiple properties, making it difficult for locals to secure property for commercial cannabis use. Many other cities have actually awarded points to the locals to make it the playing field fair. This is something Madera needs to replicate. This is from Akram Kasim. Honorable Mayor, City Council members, City Manager, and staff, thank you for all of your continued efforts and hard work. Your efforts are truly appreciated. Thank you. Thank you. First, I want to once again bring up the need for a focus on locals in the cannabis program. It is important that Maderans are given an opportunity to partake and flourish in this business. Giving more points to Madera residents and business owners will ensure that Maderans have a fighting chance to get these licenses. 90% of the battle is the application process. A larger focus on locals ensures that profiles will be reinvested back into the community. The next 2 or 3 new California cannabis giants could possibly be Madera owned and operated. Let's pave the road for that to happen. Secondly, I want to applaud the council's decision to consider excluding Lyons Town and Country Park from the distance requirement. In doing so, there will be more available buildings and properties, which means more opportunities. Throughout the week, there's been a lot of misinformation spread on social media. A lot of that misinformation has made it seem as if this will benefit solely one group or one company. This is quite the opposite. Not excluding Town and Country Park from the distance requirement would actually be the action that would benefit solely one group, because it would limit competition for them, because it would mean less applicants in that area and as a whole. There wasn't any fuss about the Well Center or Courthouse Park or any other properties that were excluded from the distance requirement. Why now? And that is all for written public comment, Mayor. We do have another caller, phone number ending 6913. Caller, please unmute yourself. Phone number ending 6913. Caller 6590.
Hello? Hello, Honorable Mayor and council members.
Yes,
my name is Rico Salvador. Hello, Honorable Mayor and council members. I just wanted to say thank you all, and I commend you guys on all the efforts and everything that you guys are doing for the vertical integration, for just listening to the questions that we had and giving us some answers and making some adjustments. I do, however, have a couple questions. I'll make it quick, just in regards to the equity requirement. It's just because there was a potential partner or candidate that was going to join our team that met all the criteria, except they'd never been arrested for marijuana. And so I didn't know if that was an exact requirement that is a must, or if that was just one of the options. And if it is a must, if there's any way that you guys could take that into consideration to possibly make an adjustment on that, because it is kind of hard with everybody or somebody reaching or meeting the criteria but have never been in trouble for actual marijuana, but all the rest of the criteria, they meet that. So with that said, again, I thank you guys for for taking the steps that you're doing to make this happen in Madera. We look forward to being a part of it, and Team Mainstream is just very excited just to continue on through the process, and we appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, hold on a second. I believe that was a form of a question. Hilda, would you just like to quickly address that?
Thank you. I think that Mr. McPherson's better, more knowledgeable on the area.
That'll be fine.
Talking about the conviction, it has to do with the date when medicinal marijuana was first authorized in the state of California, and he could get into more details on that.
Go ahead, Mr. McPherson. You're so quiet sometimes I forget that you're there. So the question was that, is that one of the conditions of which that equity license would be awarded?
So the answer is no, Mayor. It does not necessarily meet that criteria on its own merit. It's just that is just one of the ones that would qualify for the component of it, but they still would need to meet the income related component of this. And so A and C, they would still need to meet. B just means that they have to be after. That's actually the Prop 215 Compassionate Use Act, where medical marijuana was recognized, but people were still being arrested for that. So that it was after that date if they were arrested, but it is not on its own required.
Thank you very much. I hope that answers your question, sir.
It does. Thank you so much. We appreciate you guys. And again, Team Mainstream looks forward to being a part of this big movement, and just wish you guys a good evening. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any additional, Alicia?
We do, Mayor. Looks like we have caller phone number ending 2250. Caller,
hello?
Yes.
Hello.
Oh, can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Santos and City Council. I am Angelina Garcia. I'm representing Mainstream Medicinal Club. And I just want to thank you very much for moving forward and putting a price on the application, and say thank you to the city manager, Arnoldo, for all the clarification that he gave us. And that gave us a lot of answers. We had a lot of questions, and thank you for giving us all those answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Caller ending in 2250. Please unmute yourself. Caller, are you there?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, do callers know if they have the unmute control to their end? Is that something that someone in our...
I believe it's star
Mark,
6.
could you help us out with that?
No, yes, I allow them permission to talk and then ask them to unmute, and a recording comes on and asks them to unmute their phone.
So Mark, to unmute themselves, is it *9? Is that the command if I'm looking at the agenda correctly? Am I right in saying that? Mark, or either City Clerk Gonzalez?
I believe it's *9, City Manager Rodriguez, *9.
So,
Caller, can you hear me? If you can, press *9 on your phone.
It looks like we have one more with their hand raised as well.
Phone number ending 3055.
So to the callers that would like to speak, I think if you press *9 on your phone, that grants you ability to speak.
Okay, I think what we'll do is we'll move on, and then if they've finally get a chance to unmute themselves, we'll allow them to go ahead and make their ask their questions. Is there anyone else, Alicia?
We have caller 1089. Can you please unmute yourself, caller? Caller phone number ending in 1089.
Yes. Yes, can you
go
hear me?
ahead. We can hear you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you taking my call. My name is George Zaleja. I'm a local Madeiran resident, born and raised, a local business owner, part of Team Mainstream. I just wanted to let everyone know that we really appreciate everyone's due diligence and work in ironing out a lot of these details. I know how much work goes into a lot of this. It's long hours. But I did want to bring up the notion of, as someone had stated before in one of the written statements, of the potentiality of giving consideration of points for local Madeiran residents. I really feel like this gives us a better fighting chance, especially those that are locally from the land here in Madera. We would like to really have that opportunity to reinvest into our community, and just wanted to bring awareness to that. But again, I really appreciate everyone. Thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you.
As far as the callers go, if they want to click on *9, that is to raise their hand. *6 is actually to mute and unmute.
Oops.
Sorry, everyone.
Caller, if you would like to press *6 to unmute yourself.
You are.
Okay. 3055, please speak.
Good evening, Mayor Garcia and council members. My name is Ed McIntyre. I live at 1234 DeChesney in Madera, California. I've observed this cannabis effort for 5 years. Councilmember Rodriguez brought the idea to council in March 2017 during a budget hearing. He proposed generating new revenue and new jobs through cannabis industry activity instead of cutting city jobs and services. At the time, he got a lukewarm reception from his colleagues. Now we have a council that supports allowing the cannabis industry to operate in Madera with the prospect of generating good paying jobs and tax revenue for the city. I appreciate the work the council and staff have put in to create an ordinance that seeks to generate new jobs for our residents and new revenue for the city while being careful to protect our community. I specifically want to call out City Manager Rodriguez and David McPherson for their consistent good advice and information. On April 21 of this year, after hours of discussion and debate, 3 workshops over 4 months, the council voted unanimously to use a merit-based selection process for the retail cannabis industry and an administrative quality control non-competitive process for the non-retail cannabis industry as outlined by David McPherson, which does not require final council approval after the application is deemed sufficient. You gave clear direction, yet regulations presented to the council for non-retail do not provide for an administrative process as is the industry standard. I'm hoping it is an oversight in the cleanup effort. But with the non-retail procedure as now written, a non-retail business could file applications for 3 licenses, incurring huge expenses, pay all fees, demonstrate an appropriate location, follow all the rules, and still be turned down by a vote of the council. No reason given, no appeal process. That is not the administrative process, non-competitive quality control procedure that council directed. No experienced, well-capitalized, non-retail cannabis business will be inclined to locate here under those conditions. According to Mr. McPherson, virtually all other municipalities have adopted that administrative non-competitive process for non-retail cannabis, which again does not require final council approval after the application is deemed sufficient. I ask the council to provide a genuine quality control administrative process. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Let's see.
Mayor, we have one more caller, phone number ending 2250. Caller, please unmute yourself by entering *6.
As I said before, let's move on and then we can come back if they are able to unmute themselves.
Yeah, she did it once, and then I had to mute her because they were talking at the same time.
Okay, that's unfortunate.
Give me just a second here, and I'll try and see if I can put her back in. It does not look like it's working.
Okay, we will close public comment, but I will allow that person to come back in if they're able to unmute themselves. Council chambers, who would like to speak? Mr. Montes. Mr. Montes?
*6, Mr. Montes.
No, *9.
My *6 wouldn't work. I was too focused on getting your attention. Yeah, I wanted to circle back to the same item about the buy right and vertical integration, and just touch on, I know Hilda's already explained this once, but Mr. Gorgon did mention a alternative that we can do tonight, where if we can by resolution exempt that one license process, so that they would not have to come back to council. That's one of the things that I get the biggest complaints about in professionally, where government has a bunch of hurdles to overcome. A lot of developers want a streamlined process, and this is just something that we would have to bring them back. Say they have their application filled out on a Thursday night before council. It's not going to get on the agenda fast enough. They're going to have to wait another 3 to 4 weeks, depending on what council meeting it is, to get back in front of us to get an approval. And when you're talking about, you know, millions of dollars that they've invested, hundreds of jobs, potentially hundreds of jobs that we can have for our residents, I think the sooner the better. And I just want to see if continue to explore that, if we can do that tonight, if it's possible, and if my colleagues would be amenable to that.
I don't see any hands raised, so I will chime in on this item. I am not in favor of eliminating the overview of any part of this cannabis, because it is the responsibility of the elected officials of this city to make the final decisions. We will not, in my opinion, I don't believe that we should give the final decision-making to the staff. The staff's responsibility is to prepare, vet, and then make a recommendation to the city council. And at the end of the day, the city council should be making the decision. Now, we should not confuse the permitting process with building a facility, buying and purchasing property. It is a necessary, we just discussed this today in a staff meeting along with myself, that some developers will move forward and they'll do either purchasing, et cetera, but that's their responsibility on their side. That's not the city's purview. And so I believe at the end of the day, as Arnoldo was talking about, every institution, every company has to pass through quality control. That is part of the vetting process. There's also minimum state standards that have to be met. And so I believe that every company that wants to do business in the city of Madera should be vetted, and the final decision should be made by the city council. And that is how I will be making a final vote. I believe there's some Councilwoman Gallegos, did you have your hand raised?
Yes, but Councilman Rodriguez was first, Mayor.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes, thank you, Councilwoman Gallegos, and thank you, Mayor Garcia. So the way I approach this is I approach this like any other business coming into Madera. What is the process that goes through that? What's the process through a business? And I'm not asking this as a question to be answered, but I think we all know that when a business wants to apply in Madera, they go through a certain process, administrative process. And not all those business permits come through the city council, because that's we entrust our city manager and our staff. Once we give policy, his job is to execute that policy. So if there is a business wanting to establish, whether it be a manufacturing in almonds or pistachio, whatever the case may be, so as long as they meet those minimum requirements, and I believe coming back to the council would just be redundant. I mean, you've met all the state requirements. They've met every single condition that's required. We should be more of an appellate body than we are an approving body. And I think that serves right for any business that comes into Madera. Again, I think direction has always been constant in that we wanted to have the non-retail as a non-competitive, and again, administrative by right or quality. That's always been the direction. And I think that if we go back to minutes, I think we can see that the council did approve that unanimously. Now, Hilda brought up a good point that this was brought as a legal ordinance, but again, direction was there. The direction was there that we bring this back. I don't recall ever seeing that the council gave direction to bring this back as an approving body. That I didn't get clear. There were several questions asked. I think in the last meeting, Councilmember Montes had also asked David, and David deferred to Hilda, but there was never a clear answer. And that's part of the cleanup that I had requested, is that we differentiate these applications based on their nature. One is the retail, one is social equity, and the other is non-competitive, non-retail vertical integration. So I think it's important that we understand the process, because again, if we go through this process, the council then makes a decision that goes against that or contrary to the requirements, does that not open us for litigation? And then at that time, then the city council then is putting themselves in a situation that could be avoided easily. If you allow your chief of staff, you allow your city manager, and you allow your staff to make those decisions because they're being vetted through the process anyway. So again, I bring up the word redundancy. There's no need for that. I entrust everything on my city manager. We make policies. That's what we were elected for, to make policies. His job is to execute them, no different than going through a budget process. We approve the budget, they write the checks because we've already approved it. No different. We gave him direction to do that. And this is no different here. So those are my comments. I hope that the council can see that. And as Councilmember Montes had brought, if possible, because of the section that was pointed out, section 65.14H states that the city council by resolution, pursuant to the council's resolution, can also do that. So if that's something, Hilda, that we can do, then I would suggest that we strike out approved by council and let us be more of an appellate body than a deciding factor. That would be my recommendation before us here, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gallegos.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Rodriguez said it so eloquently. That's exactly some of the things that I was going to bring up, so I'm not going to be redundant. So with that, Councilman Rodriguez, is that a motion that you want to put in place?
I would put in a motion that in our resolution that's presented before us today on the guidance and resolution portion, that we strike out the approving council approval on the non-retail, non-competitive by right process there. So yes, that would be my motion. And make that to be, again, a administrative process.
Second.
Before we make a first and a second, is there anyone else on the council would like to ask a question or make a comment? If not, then I'll move on to the motion. Okay. Yes. No, I don't see you, Mr. Montes. Sorry. Go ahead.
I try to be solo this time.
Break up the minute.
Yeah, I just thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add that so when I did work for the city, I think the business license approvals were handled at an account tech 3 level. So we did have a business license rep. They did route all the business applications to all the departments. The departments would sign off and say, hey, you meet our requirements. And that would be the process. Those licenses don't come to council. Those things are, as long as you meet the minimum requirements, the departments sign off on it. And for this administrative process, I think it should be the same. I mean, the account tech 3, it's not an extremely high level position. I mean, it's an important position, but it's not extremely high level in the organization. And they're the ones that are approving currently, if things haven't changed, business licenses. So again, for this process, I think it should follow the same. We are paying a lot of money for quality control. We're paying HDL. We're investing a lot of staff time, and we're essentially saying, yeah, but we don't believe in you, or we don't trust in you. Which I don't think any council member here does that. But so those are my comments. We can take this vote, and I believe that we should move forward with Councilmember Rodriguez's motion.
Hilda?
Thank you, Mayor. Council, as the governing board, you have the authority to retain powers and to delegate powers. In this instance, if you decide you want to delegate powers, you can do that, as I've already advised you. The only issue would be that you cannot do that by amending the resolution that's before you. You would need to amend the ordinance. And I have looked at it. It probably would not take long to amend the ordinance. And I talked about CEQA earlier, but this kind of a decision, as far as the decision-making authority, it would not trigger CEQA. So we don't have that extra time, but it would require an ordinance. It would to come back for introduction and adoption to amend, just like that section that the city manager brought to you earlier in D1 as to exempting the particular park. That's the way that it would apply. There are many decisions that the city council as the governing board retains. And there are many actions that business people and developers may take, where they might spend tens of thousands of dollars. In my 40-some years of as city attorney, I've seen many big projects not voted on after tens of thousands of dollars, and what looked like a staff recommendation because staff felt that everything had been followed. In saying that, though, at the end, that doesn't mean that council will just whimsically have the ability to say no. We call the meeting to order and we make a motion and we say no to the recommendation from the city manager. The city council, if it were inclined to vote no, it would have to have evidence before it. It would have to follow due process. There would be a lot of procedures that would have to be followed for that process to take. It's just like any other instance where you have to make findings for certain kinds of denials that you take up in land use or in rejection of bids and things of that nature. So short answer is you may decide to have your city manager make the decision on vertical integration permits. You just can't do it tonight. You may do it by amending the ordinance, and that direction can be given if 4 of you decide.
In the council chambers?
Yes, Mayor, I think I was third hand up.
And, okay.
Councilwoman
And
Evans was
Mr.
first.
Montes?
Councilwoman Evans was first.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Evans. You have a bigger screen. Yes. If you could unmute yourself.
I am unmuted.
Oh, no.
As far as I'm concerned, I just feel that we were elected to do the job that's put before us. And if the ordinance says that the council is the one supposed to make the final vote, then that's what I feel we should do. I understand and I respect everyone's opinion here, and that's what each one of us has. And I trust Arnaldo to the fullest. But if I'm elected to make a final decision, then that's what I would do. So that's my comment, and that's where I stand right now.
Thank you. Mr. Rodriguez, council member.
Yes. So the question that I have for you now, Hilda, is again, the item from the ordinance, or the section from the ordinance was cited. And again, that was 6-5.14H. Can we not utilize that or cite that language to be able to amend the resolution before us? Is that not possible? Because what I'm reading here, it states that each category of the cannabis license pursuant to review criteria established by the city council resolution. So when I look at the word pursuant to, it's according to. So wouldn't that then follow the resolution?
Hilda, I'm sorry, Hilda, you're on mute. And I did share my screen for the benefit of the council.
Thank you. Thank you, Arnoldo.
Yeah.
So Mayor, so if you read the last sentence, it does say, you did not finish the section. It does say the city council's decision as to the selection, parentheses, denial or approval of the prevailing candidates shall be final and shall not be subject to further administrative or city council review or appeal. And, you know, it shouldn't be that hard. If 4 of you want to change it, we'll bring back an ordinance next time and we change it. But, you know, you're still going to have 4 votes, Mr. Rodriguez.
No, I get that.
So,
I certainly get that.
You can make it, you can make your vote, yeah. So
thank you.
It's just that my best advice, and once in a while, a client does not accept the advice, and that's fine. My best advice is to do it by ordinance, to just amend the ordinance, just to make it clear.
Correct. Thank you. Appreciate that. So again, you're saying that this then would not apply, that section then would not allow us to amend that resolution that's before us today? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Correct. You could not do it today. And if you look at the preceding section G, it says at the conclusion of the vetting process, the city manager shall prepare a report for consideration by the city council. So you have to harmonize all the various provisions of statutes, in this case, the ordinance, and you can't just pick one sentence and you know, bank on that. So when we harmonize the entire ordinance and harmonize the action that was taken by the council to adopt this ordinance, the best advice is that if you want to change that and give that power to Mr. Rodriguez, you can, but you need to amend the ordinance.
Yeah, and I just want to stay constant to the, again, to what I thought was the direction. And again, you know, this could be me, but I felt that direction was clear on how the process should be carried forward, and that was through quality by right administrative. There's no doubt that was the direction. Again, with the resolution, I figured that we could actually make that amendment to correct that. But if you're saying that we have to go back to the ordinance and make that, then my motion again would be that we come back, amend the ordinance, and allowing our city manager to have that authority to make that decision once they meet the by right or administrative process. That would be my motion, if that is what you would advise, Hilda.
You can do that. What I would advise, because you have, as you know, you have a resolution with 3 parts, and there's two parts, the fees one and the numbers one. And I would recommend that you do those first. And then, but you did, yeah. On the procedures, I would recommend that that if you're okay with the procedures for social and for retail, that council go ahead and adopt the resolution today, and then carve out the section on the procedures, and then direct the staff to come back with an ordinance to address that.
Great. So again, before I go on to that motion, I do want to just expand on history and with the city council. Many of you were not council members at this time, but there have been capricious council members, and this is where I think it opens up a window for litigation. And if the council again can't really discuss on the actual items or the actual situations that occurred, but there's been times where not only in Madera but in other municipalities where a certain by right administrative process is not then adhered to by the council. And that again opens up for litigation, and that can result in hundreds, if not millions of dollars for the city, because again, if you call it something and then you go against it, then you're breaching, so to speak, a contract. And in legal terms, I think you can express this better than I can, Hilda, but I certainly don't want to put the council in that. I don't want to put them in that. I don't want to put us in that position where we can open up for future litigation. And if you go back and do research on councils, I think you would find that it does happen, and it's pretty common. So again, protecting the city council, protecting our agency, I think this would be the best route to go by amending the ordinance, allowing our city manager, giving him the authority to make that decision, because once you have to meet that stringent requirement, monies that have to be poured in, I think we always talked about wanting to incentivize or wanting to bring opportunity and retailers and operators here, and we're going against that. We're going against what we promised the people. Let's give them an opportunity to come here. Let's give them an opportunity to establish, but let's not make it very difficult for them. And if any developer operators out there looking at this, they'll say, well, shoot, I don't want to go to Madera if this is the process, because you're saying one thing, but yet you're doing the opposite and you're contradicting the administrative process. So again, my motion would be to amend the ordinance, and again, allowing the city manager the authority. Hilda, I think you had brought up the other two items that are presented.
Thank you. What I would recommend is that you can you address because D3 has three parts, right? 3 procedures. Can you just address? I would recommend council address 1 and 2, so at least you move forward and don't hold up everything because of this issue of this.
We have a motion on the floor right now.
Let me start off with this motion.
But
here.
you don't have you don't have a right to you can make a motion to direct it back to staff and prepare an ordinance.
Then
with respect
let
to the vertical.
that be my motion, then, that we take this back to staff, prepare the ordinance where we give the city manager authority on the administrative process for the non-retail vertical integration.
And for the
second that.
Let me take that action first, Hilda. I think that would serve us best so that we're not having any confusion here.
Oh, let me just ask a question. You're talking about item D3, or are you talking about all 3? Item
D3 specifically, or in this case, we're talking about the ordinance, Mr. Mayor. I went specifically on the ordinance, letting the item that's before us on D3 has the city council as the approving body. I wanted to make the motion that we bring this back, take it to staff then prepare the ordinance, letting the city manager being the authority for the administrative process. Is that clear?
You have a second by Mr. Montes.
Was that clear there, Hilda? Did we get that? I mean, I just want to make sure I'm articulating correctly and you're understanding what I'm saying.
I know what you're wanting to do, Mr. Rodriguez. And if you look at D3, there's parts 1, 2, and 3 to D3, and you're focusing on part 3 of D3, right? The procedures and guidelines.
Yes,
so you
thank
would
you.
Why don't you say that as to D3, part 3, that you would like, you don't want to approve it tonight, and instead you want to direct staff to come back with an ordinance.
So if that serves this fit, my motion would be not to approve item D33. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, item D33, and have staff go back and correct or amend the ordinance, making the city manager, again, the approving body for the non-retail vertical integration.
And again, Mr. Montes second that.
Yeah, I
will
do
open
want
it
to
up.
say, I also want to make a comment.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, so this language looks like a holdover from the initial ordinance that we had, where everything was going to be a competitive process. And it just looks like that language never changed even after all of council agreed. I think Mayor, you even made the comment, okay, now it makes sense, and it was going to be different. And I think again, this is just a holdover. We do have the right as council to change the ordinance, and this is probably something that we should have done, or maybe staff should have done at the time. But I mean, this is a large project, and I get it. And these little details, the mays and the shalls, kind of confuse things or make it harder. And getting all that stuff straight is not an easy thing, and I acknowledge that. So I would be in favor of tabling everything and coming back, all 1, 2, and 3 until we get this sorted out. But I will. Yeah, so that's going to be my comment. I'd be in favor of tabling it all, getting this sorted out, and then coming back with an amendment, because we can't proceed if this is the sticking point. We can't proceed with anything anyway.
But you can proceed with the other 2.
Well, not the rest of the ordinance. So it would.
The ordinance could be amended as to the vertical integration final decision.
I get that, but that's what I would recommend.
Okay. So you're holding up the whole process by that?
Sure. Well, the whole process is already being held up.
Okay. All right. So I want to comment on that before I see you, Councilwoman Evans. I see. I disagree again to pulling item D3 and taking it back for changing the ordinance. I want to keep it as is, that the City Council maintain the final binding authority as to granting all permits, not just 1 and 2, but all 3. I apologize, Councilwoman Evans. I just wanted to make sure that my comment was directed again to maintaining my position that we keep that in place. So I would be against the motion to go back and changing the ordinance. Councilwoman?
Yes, and I agree with that. That is my opinion. That is what I want to do. And I'm going to stand by that, because that's what was written. That's what was presented tonight. And I just feel that this is where it started, that the council was the one to make the final decision. And that's where I want to remain. And that's not a cowardly decision. That is a forceful decision. And this is where I stand. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. I don't see any more hands raised. Oh, somebody in chambers?
It's me, Mayor. I've had my hand up and it goes down and then it goes back up and goes down. I haven't had a chance. I just want my colleagues to be aware that this is not changing the ordinance. We all agreed unanimously on 4/21. I've looked back at some of the tapes about making sure that we weren't the final say on this one, that it would go back to staff and our city manager. So it's not that we are changing any ordinance. I think the direction was a little unsure, but if you go back and take a look at it, we were very clear 6-0 that would happen. And so with that, I think we should call for the vote, because we've had this motion on the floor for quite some time now.
You know, and I'm going to agree with you that we should call for a vote on this because I think we spent enough time. Either we move forward or we do not. And we still have not finished with council business. So I'm going to ask for the city clerk, Alicia, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mayor. And just to confirm, this is the motion made by Councilmember Rodriguez and
That's
seconded by Councilmember Montes.
Correct.
Thank you. Councilmember Gallegos?
No. I mean, sorry, yes. Yes, for a motion, for Jose's motion, yes. Sorry.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Yes.
Councilmember Montes?
Yes.
Councilmember Evans?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Villegas?
No.
Mayor Garcia?
No.
Final vote, 3 yeses by Councilmember Gallegos, Rodriguez, and Montes, 3 noes by Councilmember Evans, Mayor Pro Tem Villegas, and Mayor Garcia. Motion fails.
I would like to make a motion that we pass item D3, including items 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to need a second or a tie. Mr. Villegas?
Yeah.
Okay. Discussion?
No, I'll just make a motion.
Okay. Motion made by myself to pass item D3 in its entirety. Second by Council Member Villegas. Anita, would you please call the roll?
Mayor, I'll call the roll. Councilmember Gallegos?
No.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Oh.
Councilmember Montes?
No.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Villegas?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Yes.
That's 3 noes by Councilmember Gallegos, Councilmember Rodriguez, Councilmember Montes, 3 yes votes by Councilmember Evans, Mayor Pro Tem Villegas, Mayor Garcia. Motion fails.
Okay, Mr. Rodriguez, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Considering that the council appears to be on its tie vote 3-3, we've obviously heard from a lot of council members, a couple of community members, that potentially some of the language that's contained in the ordinance that was adopted by council could have potentially been a carryover from April the 21st. That's highly likely, and that was one of the items that where staff acknowledged that a staff made an error. It was simply that it was a mistake. Staff attempted to capture the direction of council, but there is a possibility that staff didn't capture council's direction properly or appropriately. And considering that council's on a tie vote right now, it could be worth exploring to have council direct staff to go back, rewatch the video. I believe most of the discussion took place at the 2-hour 32 mark on April the 21st, if memory serves me. And there's a discussion about 10 or 15 minutes long where a lot of this was hashed out. Some of this I do believe goes to semantics in terms of what was agreed on. However, I believe I can speak on behalf of every council member that I believe council members want to see this move forward. However, at the same time, there's simply a disagreement in terms of how we move it forward. From my perspective, it sounds like council agrees on most everything with the exception of the vertical integration. I'll add that we may not receive a single vertical application. We may receive a couple. David probably has the best insight in terms of who may potentially apply. Staff is proposing some amendments this evening to try to dangle a carrot, and we've tried to simplify it and ease some of the regulations to allow a greater number of vertical integration projects. We think we've done that. However, if there's still no consensus in terms of who the final authority or who the acting body is, staff could potentially go back, watch the video to make sure that we properly recorded council's direction, which again, there is a possibility that did not occur based on some of the feedback this evening and some of the discussion or some of the items or some of the feedback that we received in the past 96 hours or so. And I'm saying 96 hours, that's being staff. So again, I think council would agree that we all want to move it forward. The only hiccup here is the vertical integration, which again, we may get 1 or 2 applicants. And that's why we're attempting to carve out or we're changing or we're recommending some minor modifications to try to use the carrot approach to entice a couple of applicants to come to the city of Madera. So with that, Mayor, thank you very much, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Yes, thank you. Hilda?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Manager. I just want to remind everyone that direction was given at various times and changed at various times. And your final action that was before you in writing, in very clear writing, if you read it as we've read it on the screen, provides that the city council retains control. And again, you can change that. You can change that, but I don't think going back and listening to tapes and recording, it just says, yeah, it was a mistake. So if it's a mistake that the way it's written, that it can only be corrected by amending the ordinance. That's the bottom line. So yes, if it were a mistake, and I'll acknowledge maybe it is holdover language that we all missed, all 3 of your professionals and all 7 or all 6 of you missed it. And so we now have to correct it. We can't just ignore it. We can't just say we made a mistake. Let's listen to tapes and let's change the resolution.
So at this point, do we move on to D1? Do we move on to?
You can go back to D1 and D2.
Okay. So we'll go back to D1.
Mr. Mayor, I do have my hand up. If you don't mind recognizing me, please.
Absolutely. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. So I did want to end off before we go to D1 is that if it was a language carryover, I will say that during the initial meetings, we had very agreements, disagreements, contentious discussion over whether it be lottery, whether it be merit-based, and a lot of it there might have been lost in translation. But I do recall that, we specifically made it to where, or we specifically agreed on retail being merit-based, and again, non-retail being an administrative process. That being said, well, that's what it is, right? So now we're here, and again, we're just trying to make it right so that again, we stay consistent to what we wanted to introduce from the get-go of those contentious meetings that we had. We were able to hurdle through the obstacles, but we were able to get through, and this is why we're here. So I just want to make sure that my council knows that we can make the correction through an ordinance. And again, going back to Arnoldo's point, there may be 1 or 2 non-retailers, and based on the process and the requirements, they're very stringent to the state. So I think it would behoove us to allow this amendment and allow us to move forward so that we can bring those operators and our retailers into our community. Again, language is misconstrued sometimes in our deal because of the focus that we had at the time. And at that time, that focus was mainly hybrid. It switched to lottery. It switched to, I don't want 6 license, I want 8 license, I want 2. So there was a lot of communication, a lot of language being spilled out there. And again, the constant factor was that we've always made non-retail an administrative process. That I think we can all agree. So
thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. If you don't mind,
those are my comments. I just want to be clear
much
on that because I think the comment was brought that this can be an easy fix.
Yeah, thank you very much. We will now move on to item D1. Discussion, motion?
So Mayor, if I may, there's been a lot said since we discussed item D1. So just to bring the council back up to speed on item D1, this is a proposed text amendment to exclude Town and Country Park from the 600-foot rule. So this would allow cultivation, vertical integration, manufacturing of cannabis within 600 feet of Town and Country Park. And it would also potentially allow some retail immediately to the east, some standalone retail, I should add, east of Schnorr, considering that is a commercially zoned area. Other parks that are currently excluded from the 600-foot rule are Rotary Park on Gateway. We have Courthouse Park in downtown Madera. We have the Well Center and Swimming Pool Park. We also have the library. We have the fairgrounds. And I believe we have the golf course. And let me confirm that. And we have the golf course. And the Frank Burgon Center, which is our senior center, approximate to our police department. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the mayor.
Thank you. Do any of my colleagues have any comments or want to make a motion on D1? Mr. Rodriguez, council member.
Yes, thank you. I didn't expect to speak that much tonight, but thank you for the opportunity once again. You know, this item before us, it is a site that sits in my district. And I think before you today, you heard several comments made from constituents that either live in my district or probably partake in the park there at Town and Country. So that being said, I know that in other areas that were sensitive use, I think this was brought before the council during that ordinance, and not a lot of hype or a lot of noise was brought before the council. So in staying consistent with our duty as a city council elected officials, I think it's important for us to listen to our constituency. And at this time, our constituency is saying that, hey, this is probably not a good idea, although most of them think it's a dispensary. I think their intention is any cannabis around that area is what is striking up the conversation. So unfortunately, I will not be able to approve that because I'm being constant or consistent to what my duty is as a council member. And I apologize, but I don't think I can see that go before us tonight.
Alicia, I failed to call on two folks who are in the public comment. Alicia, do you want to identify them?
We have caller phone number ending 2250. Caller, please unmute yourself. *6 to unmute caller.
Mark, did you unmute her on your end?
They're gone.
They're gone. How about caller 6262? Caller, if you're there, please unmute yourself.
Good evening, Mayor and council members.
Yes.
Hi. Yes, I would like to. I'm also resident and business owner there in Madera, and I've overheard the way that businesses start the process of signing themselves up for conducting business there in the city of Madera. And there is a process, of course, but you know, this is a new industry, a new business that's going to bring a lot of income, a lot of gross sales, along with security levels behind it. And we are looking at this as a big picture. I feel that having the council members there have final decision on all 3 licenses is ideal. This is new to the city of Madera, and I want to have input in that changing of ordinance in the future. I mean, we got to get the ball rolling. We got to get things completed and done, and that's my input for that topic there. But as far as the Town Country Club there in the city of Madera, you know, there are some buildings there, and of course, they're not going to be dispensary opened up to public. They're going to be cultivation. So I feel that we should give an opportunity to anybody that's looking into vertical licensing to open up a cultivation operation there in that area. Again, there's going to be a lot of security levels that need to be taken care of, procedures. And I honestly feel that if we were to educate the public on how they would be operating on a day-to-day basis, then they would probably be a little bit more comfortable in having that in the area. And that's what I have to say for tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Were those the only two, Alicia?
Yes, Mayor, that.
Thank you much. I will now close public comment. Councilwoman Evans?
Yes, I'm in agreement with the gentleman that just called. And if we can have the cannabis retail shops in the areas of Yosemite, Pan Am, all the other parks, then Town and Country, because there is the industrial park that's out there. If they have the industrial park, which is out there and they're cultivating there, and they have a licensing where they can go and open a shop somewhere else in town, then why would we not have the licensings for them to be able to do the cultivation out by Pan Am? I mean, excuse me, by Town and Country. It's still going to be the 600 feet just as it is everywhere else. So if it can be everywhere else in town, then Town and Country is no different than anything else. So I'm in favor of it being at near Town and Country just as well as it is at Pan Am and all the other parks that are located around.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Rodriguez?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Garcia. So in the process of our workshops, you know, one of the things that was very promising was that areas that were located in these sensitive areas actually came up with letters of support. And I can use a downtown association because they see the benefit of what it does down in that sector of the community. But if you don't have the same support in this particular area of town because of a park, then I have to, you know, disagree that this is what the community is telling you. This is not what they want. So why would I go against that? That is my job as a city council member, is to seek direction of my constituents. So I think it's important that we recognize that during the process of our workshops, you did have a lot of support from a lot of not only interest group retailers, but also sectors of those communities that wanted it and invited it. But here on the other end, you're having constituents coming before you and saying, this is not what we want. So I think we have to respect that. And as much as it hurts me, because I'm a big promoter of cannabis, I want this city to grow. I want cannabis, but you know, there's certain designated areas for that. And I think the community was very clear on that. And we have to respect that. So those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Mr. Montes.
I'm sorry. I can't stop being goofy about that. So I guess this question is, and I'm not trying to be contentious. I'm not trying to start a fight, but my question is for Councilwoman Evans. So the ordinance was written to exclude or not to exclude Town and Country Park.
Mr. Montes,
I'm asking
going to
about
ask a
this.
favor of you.
Yeah.
When you address the council and not a particular person, and I would appreciate that. So
I have a question
in the future.
I have a question on a comment that she made. Am I not allowed to
That's
ask her
fine.
a
No,
question?
you can ask a question, but
Right.
as far as addressing each other, I think that's inappropriate.
Okay. So council has said that, or council members have said that the ordinance was written and that's what we should abide by. And on this situation, we're making an amendment, or we're changing the ordinance to not follow what was written. So what is different about this situation and other situations?
Hilda or
that's
Mr.
my
McPherson,
question.
would you like to answer this? As to the appropriateness of item D1 and
That's really within a council member's prerogative to determine whether to amend an ordinance or not to amend an ordinance. And a council member may see the two issues differently. And so I don't think anybody's saying never change or always change.
That's just my question.
So can we move forward with D1 at this point, Hilda?
Yes, if you
Okay.
have a motion and a second and a
Okay.
vote.
So seeing no further comments, okay, Mr. Rodriguez, council member.
So at this moment, Mr. Mayor, I am going to make a motion to deny item D1.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Rodriguez to deny motion by item D1, second by Councilwoman Gallegos. Any further discussion? It's getting late. Sorry, Alicia.
Okay.
Would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Gallegos,
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councilmember Montes,
No.
Councilmember Evans,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Villegas,
No.
Mayor Garcia,
No.
motion fails with 2 yes votes, 4 no votes, 2 yes votes by Councilmember Gallegos and Councilmember Rodriguez, and 4 no votes by Councilmember Montes, Councilmember Evans, Mayor Pro Tem Villegas, and Mayor Garcia.
In an effort to continue the process for approving cannabis, I will make a motion to approve item D1. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by myself to approve item D1, second by Councilmember Villegas. Alicia, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Gallegos,
No.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
No.
Councilmember Montes,
Yes.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Villegas,
Yes.
Mayor Garcia.
Yes.
Motion passes with two no votes by Councilmember Gallegos, Councilmember Rodriguez, and 4 yes votes by Councilmember Montes, Councilmember Evans, Mayor Pro Tem Villegas, and Mayor Garcia.
Thank you very much.
I so move to approve D2 as presented.
Haven't we done that already? Am I
Sorry.
confused?
Getting late. Thank you.
We did.
I thought so. So Hilda.
Yes, thank you. I have a couple of things. One would be, there was a motion concerning the D3 part of D33, if you will, of item D3 on the vertical integration. And one thing that could be done is that you could approve, again, the procedures for the retail and for the social equity, and then direct us to put together a resolution that would outline the process that the city council will use when it reviews the vertical integration recommendation from the city manager. So that, because there's been a lot of concern that a city council would just be whimsical and just do whatever it wants. And so perhaps we could look at putting together some procedures that the council would adopt and say, when this matter comes to us, this is the process we're going to follow. Due process, fairness, opportunity to be heard, no arbitrary decisions, looking at all the evidence, et cetera, et cetera. Just a thought, if you want to salvage some of this.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear here, Hilda. but we've taken several votes on this already, and I feel that we have finalized it at this point. So I'm not sure why we would want to overrule this. What we can do is table this one, number 3, for a future meeting, and then we can take it up again. But as far as I'm concerned right now, we've had several votes on this.
But at this point, you haven't voted on D1 and D2, so you're holding them hostage.
Oh, no, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. So if we could have a motion to approve item D3 and approve number 1 and 2, is that what you're saying?
That's just an offer if you want to, move forward. And then that way, the only issue left is the vertical integration that could perhaps be addressed.
At a future meeting.
As suggested, yes.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve 1 and 2 and D3.
Motion by Councilwoman Evans to approve item D3, 1 and 2.
Yes.
For a second.
And Mayor, if I may, I apologize, just a point of clarification. There are a total of 3 resolutions on item D3. I believe what council is leaning towards approving would be resolution number 1, which is determining the type and the number and type of cannabis business permits that may be issued. That would be D1 or D3-1. D3-2 would be establishing fees for cannabis business permits.
Correct.
And then we have item D3, which are the procedures and guidelines. I believe council is looking at approving D3-1, D3-2, D3-3-1, D3-3-2, and not adopt, I'm sorry, 3, the policies and procedures for social, for retail, which would be one of them, social equity be the other one, and not approving cultivation or vertical integration. I believe I captured that correctly. And again, I apologize, but there are 3 resolutions as part of that item.
No, I think the motion was to adopt. The motion was to approve item D3, cannabis business permits, numbers 1 and 2, and then move number 3 for a future meeting for continuing discussion. Okay. And if need be, I can second that. Alicia, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Gallegos?
No.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
No.
Councilmember Montes?
No.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Villegas?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Yes.
Motion fails 3-3. Council members Gallegos, Rodriguez, and Montes voting no. Councilmember Evans, Mayor Pro Tem Villegas, and Mayor Garcia voting yes.
Okay. Seeing no other hands up, we will close this item and move on to item D4. Who's this? Would this Mr. Rodriguez, or would I just take it down to Keith?
Thank you, Mayor. I believe Deputy City Engineer Ellen Bitter is going to be making this presentation.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor and City Council members. If I can, I'd like to share my screen. Okay, everybody see the start of the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. So tonight before you is acceptance of the Fresno River Trail Undercrossing project. It is a project that has been a long time in the making. Typically, project acceptances are on the consent calendar because they're fairly routine. However, tonight we just wanted to highlight the completion of this project that has taken over 15 years from concept to completion. Before you is a picture of the completed project showing the connection of existing sidewalk paths on the left side of the screen. I just want to point that this is a picture looking north on the Union Pacific Railroad and also Gateway Drive. It was taken by our own Joseph Corella with his drone, so we could get a bird's eye view. So it connects to the sidewalk that serves Rotary Park and the skate park. It goes under Gateway Drive. It continues under the Union Pacific Railroad, and you can kind of see the canopy structure that we had to build to protect anyone on the trail from anything that might be coming off of the trains as they go by. And then the project connects at back at Riverside, the existing river trail. And it allows pedestrians and bicyclists to avoid the Cleveland Gateway. The project was awarded almost 2 years ago, October 9th, 2019, to Truxell and Valentino Landscape Development, Inc. And there were 3 change orders throughout the project, but within our allowable 10%, we had a fair amount of utility conflicts that we had to avoid. And there was some changes actually to the river channel itself that caused a redesign. And also, since the project design started in 2010, there were some modifications needed to bring some of the accessibility requirements up to the current codes. So the final project construction cost was $1,113,020.95. Overall, the project cost was close to $1.5 million. Those individual costs are detailed in the staff report, but it captures there were several permits required along the way. With Union Pacific, we had a license agreement, and then of course the engineering costs also go along with it. So I wanted to give you a timeline of this project. It started in 2005 with an application for CMAQ funding, and the funds were granted, and they held throughout the project. In fact, it was one of the longest standing CMAQ projects on the books until we were finally able to deliver it 2 years ago. In 2009, we did acquire some bicycle transportation account funding, but unfortunately, due to its timeline requirements, we were not able to hold on to the construction element of those funds. Move forward to about 2015, and we were able to secure additional grants through the Active Transportation Program and also an Air District grant. And those funds, along with some Measure T funds, helped secure the remaining funds to move the project forward. So in 2008, we entered into a design agreement with Lars Anderson. They were good partners all the way through this project. We had 6 amendments in dealing with the various issues, but they were great to work with through this and helped us move this forward. Large component was seeking approval from the Union Pacific Railroad. We started working with them in the kind of the light orange area around 2010, providing them concepts and drawings, and for various reasons, ultimately one of the folks we were working with ended up retiring, and then it kind of fell off the radar of Union Pacific Railroad. We picked it back up in 2014 and then continued to push it forward. The struggle was with how close the trail was to the bridge deck, and so that's where our negotiations were, and we had to get some design exceptions through the Union Pacific. And finally, in May of 2018, we brought an agreement to council for approval and between both agencies. Following that approval, the California Public Utility Commission granted us approval to construct a below grade crossing, and that was on January 10th in 2019. During construction, we had to go back to the Union Pacific Railroad to reduce the canopy length because there was a conflict with the pipeline. So, but we were successful, and that's what allowed the project to move forward to completion. Starting at the beginning of 2017, we began the permit process with all of the agencies that are involved with being in the river channel. 5 permits from 4 agencies, and it took about 3 years to get the last one. So again, we awarded the contract in October 2019. We didn't get our last permit until the very end of the year, so we couldn't start construction until we had that permit. So that was January in 2020. And work progressed pretty steadily until the summer of 2020, when we had to then kind of stop and renegotiate with Union Pacific and Kinder Morgan to get that issue addressed. But then in November, we were able to bring that to conclusion, but the canopy itself was required to be redesigned. And so it had to go back to shop drawings and fabrication, and that's why it took so long for that canopy to get in. But the total project was completed in April of 2020. So I just wanted to highlight that this project is one of many multimodal projects we have coming forward. We have several bike lane projects funded with congestion mitigation and air quality funds. Also, the AHSC grant that's associated with the Veterans Housing Project is going to fund several $1 million of bike lane improvements, sidewalk improvements, and other pedestrian safety improvements. We also have a grant for a pedestrian safety project on Granada near Town and Country Park. And we are looking forward to the Granada Bicycle Pedestrian Bridge that was funded through congestion mitigation and air quality funds. Hoping that one doesn't take 15 years. We certainly learned enough in the last process to help fast track that one through the process. So tonight's recommended action, it's a minute order, accepting the Fresno River Trail UPRR and Gateway undercrossing projects, which would then trigger filing the notice of completion and releasing the retention funds 35 days after that. I'd be happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Ellen. That's a nice piece of work there. Thank you very much for that. Let me see. Alicia, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, Mayor, we do not.
Thank you much. Let's see. Council chambers?
Yes, me.
Councilwoman Gallegos?
Yes, Mayor Garcia. I have followed this project in its process throughout the years. I was on Park Rec Commission when they designed it and talked about it way before 2005. So I totally applaud our staff for completion on this project. It hasn't been easy, I know, with all the hurdles, especially with the railroad, is the hardest to deal with. So again, this is a win for our city and for that trail that's been waiting for years. And I'm excited to hear other projects are coming their way. So again, thank you so much. The community has seen it evolve, and I've heard only great things. And now the completion of it is just such a great thing. So thank you. I know it hasn't been easy. I totally appreciate it.
Yeah, I also wanted to say thank you to staff, and Ellen, thank you for that presentation. I know this project is going to serve a lot of residents in my district, and that's something that they have and had talked about, being able to cross safely. I mean, it's not only for my district, but you know, it's going to serve the whole community. But I know a lot of people are excited about using that and getting across safely. So thank you, staff. Thank you, everybody, for bringing this project to fruition.
With that, I move to approve D4 as presented.
Second.
Motion to approve D4 by Councilwoman Gallegos, second by Councilmember Montes. Alicia, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Gallegos?
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Yes.
Councilmember Montes?
Yes.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Villegas?
Yes.
And Mayor Garcia?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously with 6 yes votes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your work. We will now move on to item D5. I believe this will be an easy one. Assignment of grant administration classification to the competitive service represented by mid-management group. I believe, Wendy, do you have this one?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. So as the mayor read the title, this is related to the classification of grant administrator, which is currently an at-will management position in the city. The requested action is to move it to the competitive service, meaning it will be subject to civil service, and put it in the mid-management bargaining unit. So the position is currently vacant. So this is taking the job classification, not a person. And before advertising to fill the position, we are recommending that it be moved into the competitive service and be represented by mid-management and become subject to civil service. The proposed pay range is range 446. There's a table in your report and I have it on the next screen. It represents similar compensation under the mid-management benefit package to compensation received under the management benefits. The main differences relate to retirement contributions. And then just simply to note, under mid-management, the position will be eligible for education incentive and longevity pay. So this table shows the difference between where the pay is at currently under the management classification, range 476, compared to where it's being proposed under mid-management. Council will note that what staff tried to do was pick the range that kept the net compensation as close as possible to where it's at now. We're not recommending that total compensation be changed, but that the pay range be set so that the compensation package stays the same. So the requested action does have two parts. The first is a resolution designating the grant administrator as a competitive service position represented by mid-management and assigning the salary range 446. The second is an ordinance because your municipal code calls out which positions are exempt from competitive service, meaning they're at will. So the requested action is to waive full reading and introduce the ordinance that would remove the grant administrator from the list of at-will positions accepted from competitive service. Just to note, it will also update the job title of city administrator to city manager as a cleanup item. Since we're touching this section of the code, we'll go ahead and clean it up. I can answer any questions council has at this time.
Alicia, do we have any members of the public still with us that would like to comment on this item?
We do not, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Bring it back to council for either comments or action. Do we have a motion to approve?
Yes, I just approved. I made the motion.
Motion to approve by Councilwoman Evans, second by Councilmember Villegas. Alicia, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Gallegos?
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Yes.
Councilmember Montes?
Yes.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Villegas?
Yes.
And Mayor Garcia?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously with 6 yes votes.
Thank you very much, Wendy. We will now move on to, there are no administrative reports. We'll move on to council member reports and announcements, future agenda items. This portion of the meeting is reserved for the mayor and council members to make brief reports on boards, committees, and other public agencies and at public events, to request updates, to initiate future agenda items, to take action on matters initiated under this section of the agenda. Under this section, the council may take action only on the items specifically agendized and which meet other requirements for action. Councilwoman Gallegos.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to congratulate Valley West Christian Church for their anniversary of 34 years. Pastor Leach was here with us today, and I just want to give them a congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Garcia. I wanted to recognize everyone in attendance with the Habitat for Humanity. They had presented the home to the Alvarez family. I know that there at presence was all but Councilmember Gallegos. I believe she was at work. But I know that her spirit was there, and Mayor Garcia made sure that I think this is another great partnership again through agencies that are nonprofit in our city, but the fact that you're able to help these families that otherwise would be struggling to find a home, especially in these times, I think is a great partnership that bridges that gap. So I just wanted to thank the staff that had any participation, and also my fellow council members for again selecting these partners that make dreams happen for these folks. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Montes?
Oh yeah, I also want to thank staff for making that happen and getting this out there. And the city is shining. I think we do have, I think, 3 or more dedications. That was the second of 5, I think. And congratulations to the Alvarez family. I know it was a pretty fun event. It's pretty rewarding being involved in all that stuff. I know we did have a council member injured, but that council member survived, thankfully.
You want to explain that now?
Oh, I'll just leave it at that, but I'm glad that everybody's okay, and hopefully we can avoid injuries like that in the future. But thank you to everyone. Thank you, council, for being out there and supporting those programs. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Councilwoman Evans?
Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you to Habitat for Humanity as well as to the city for blessing that family with that home and the upcoming homes that will be blessed as well for the families that will be receiving them. Also, I want to say to Chief Watson, thank you for your firemen, Chief Garcia, and your firefighters that were here that fought the fire next door to me. To Chief Lawson, thank you very much for your staff, for your men, the boots on the ground. To each and every one of you, I truly appreciate it. My house was saved, and I thank you guys all for that. So to the city, I salute each and every one of you, and I thank you all for everything that you guys do. I know we as council have a tendency of kind of maybe bickering or going back and forth at each other, but I think all of our hearts are in the right place. And before anything else, we serve our community that we were elected by. And I just want to thank each and every one of you. I love you guys, even though sometimes you make me mad, but I love each and every one of you. And I just want to say, God bless you and thank you for this night.
Councilmember Villegas?
I just want to make it clear that was an accident. So Anita, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry. This just happened. I was like that.
See, now we want to know.
That was it, though.
Thank you very much, brother. I want to acknowledge Chief Watson up there. He's out there doing God's work for all of us and the families of the folks that are up there. So I want to thank you very much for that. I want to acknowledge the planning, engineering, and building departments. We had a meeting today. We were discussing things, and a lot of times people do not understand the process, and they tend to criticize our staff. But they just don't understand how difficult and how many projects are being done right now in the city of Madera. And so I just want to thank you for your patience. Every chance I get, I will sing your praises to folks and just say, please be patient with us. We will get to your projects ASAP as quickly as we can, and just be patient. So I just wanted to acknowledge our staff, but that includes all of our staff. And so just to make sure, but in particular, I wanted to acknowledge them because they get a lot of criticism, but it's to me, it's not acceptable. That criticism should not be happening. So with that, we will close that item DF, and we will move to closed session. Hilda, would you take us to closed session, please?
Yes, Mayor. There's one item, G1, conference with labor negotiators, Government Code Section 54957.6. Agency designated representatives Arnoldo Rodriguez and Wendy Silva. Employee organizations, General Bargaining Unit, Madera Affiliated City Employees Association, Mid-Management Employee Group, Madera POA, and Law Enforcement Mid-Management.
Thank you for that. Thank you all for your patience tonight. Thank you all for our withstanding all the work that we're doing tonight. It's late. Thank you very much for your patience, and you have a pleasant evening. Good night. To reality, yeah, so we can go eat. I'm starving.
Thank you. The city council met in closed session. All members were present and there is no reportable action.
Thank you very much for that. I now call adjournment to this meeting. Our next regular meeting is on September 15th, 2021. Everybody have a good evening.
Good night.
Bye-bye.